What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was trapped in a mansion, with many kunoichi? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Hinata Hyuga was always early for school. When Hinata had first started at the academy, the shy, violet-eyed girl would always bound through Konoha's streets with great speed to reach the academy on time. On the very first day, her minders had somewhat carelessly permitted her to simply walk from the Hyuga compound to the academy, expecting that she would either find it eventually or just go back to them if she couldn't. These minders had sorely underestimated exactly how shy Hinata Hyuga was, even at that young age. They were punished once her father Hiyashi found out about their incompetence, but that was precious little comfort to Hinata on the morning of the first day itself. Clutching her bag, the girl looked out onto the vast sea of faces before her and expressed her feelings quietly. Not with a curse, but a whimper. Taking her first steps forward, Hinata then immediately leapt out of the way of a messenger ninja and breathed in deeply, carefully ducking past people in an attempt to move up the road. It was a bad idea to begin with. Although Hinata had no idea at the time, this was one of Konoha's main roads. It was slow work moving forward, and the noise and the crowds made the girl shrink even further into herself. Excuse me," she said quietly as she passed a man carrying a few dogs, then had to stop again to let a ninja dressed in robes pass. Does anyone? It's no use, Hinata thought. Nobody seems to notice me. Although I suppose I am shorter than most of them, so I guess it's because they don't look down for me. It was no use. It had been at least 5 minutes, and she'd only gone a few meters up from where she first got onto the road. Stuck in a small niche in front of a closed door, Hinata worriedly looked out from left to right, wondering how she'd get out. They said it would only take 10 minutes to get there. Hinata worried. Father will be angry if I don't get to school on time for the first day. Hinata thought worriedly of her father's stern gaze whenever she failed, and resolved to get to school on time, even if she had to run faster than she ever had before. Of course, she thought, a place this crowded isn't very good for running. Suddenly, an opening in the crowd behind her brought Hinata, lost in thought, crashing from her worries and down onto the ground, knocked over by a tall woman with short hair. Thought Hinata. She stood up and looked at the woman more closely. She was in her late teens with light brown eyes and dark hair worn shorter than Hinata's, done up in what looked to be a ponytail. She was wearing a very short jacket. Not only that, but she was wearing a top short enough for her belly button to show. Hinata marveled at anybody being allowed to wear clothes as this woman did. Looking up further, Hinata also noticed that the woman was wearing a forehead protector. A kunoichi. Hinata mentally gasped. I mustn't offend her, she might tell the people at the school and then they'll think I'm hopeless. The ninja spoke. "Ya okay there, kid?" she asked, smiling further and closing her eyes. "I kinda ran into you there. Sorry, sensei." Hinata bowed slightly. "I shouldn't have been standing around like that. I'm wasting your time." Huh? The ninja looked confused. You're not wasting my time. Besides, I'm the one who ran into you. Sorry." She scratched the back of her head and smiled further. Hinata looked down at her feet and nodded. "Yes, sensei." "I'm not a sensei," said the ninja. "I'm Anko. Anko Mitarashi. What's your name?" Hinata. "Hyuga." Nodded Anko. "Hyuga. That explains the eyes. You should look up more, I think they're cool." Hinata tried to look up at Anko, but years of training overtook Anko's suggestion and the girl looked back down again. "So what's a Hyuga kid doing out here with us mortals?" asked Anko. School." "Oh," said Anko, and her eyes widened. You're kind of going the wrong way, then. The academy's over there." She pointed behind her and nodded. Thought Hinata, hanging her head. "I can't find anywhere. I'll never be any good at being a ninja." "Please don't tell the school," said Hinata. "If they find out I'm late they might." "Might what?" asked Anko in confusion. Fail me?" Anko laughed. "This kid has a lot to learn. Who knew Hyuga were so sheltered?" Anko stopped laughing when she realized that the little girl was quietly sobbing. She crouched down and looked into Hinata's eyes. "I didn't mean it like that, come on," she said. "Nobody's gonna fail you just for being late, kid. Some people are late all the time, even Chunin and Jonin." Anko's smiling proved infectious. For the first time that day, Hinata stopped worrying, if only briefly. "Come on," said Anko. I'll get you through this crowd of maggots. Ew, Hinata privately thought, but she quietly nodded and accepted Enko's hand anyway. Hand in hand, the two stepped back into the crowd. This time it was not a struggle for right of way. People moved for Enko in a way that amazed Hinata. It was more a struggle to keep hold on Enko's hand. As they walked, Hinata felt Enko's hand and her eyes widened. It was scarred and calloused, far from the smooth hands of her minders. How could anyone's hands be so rough? Even though her knowledge of a ninja's work was much higher than the average 6-year-old's, adults had always remained tight-lipped around her about what exactly a ninja mission entailed. Enko must be a very powerful kunoichi, thought Hinata. And she's so much older. She must be 18 at least. Finally passing a man pushing cabbages in a wheelbarrow, Enko and Hinata reached the edge of the main road, some way away from Hinata's starting point. This was good. She'd moved ahead. Well, we're here now, said Enko, stepping off the main road and onto another street. But we haven't reached the school yet, said Hinata. You can get there, said Enko. It's easy. Just follow this street till it ends, then turn left. Hinata looked down the street. It was quite a long stretch, but much thinner and less bustling than the main road. In fact, there was nobody there at all. The violet-eyed girl fretted. But what if I need your? Enko was gone. Help? Hinata sighed. It made sense that Enko would have other things to do, but she still would have liked to have stayed with her a bit longer. She was like a big sister, almost. I hope I can be the same for Hanabi, she thought, thinking of her baby sister. Well, except I'll keep my belly button covered. Hinata's navel gazing was interrupted once again by a distant, repetitive noise increasing in sound. She stopped to focus on it as it grew louder and louder, until she was sure the source was very, very close. It sounded like, "we." Turning around, Hinata Hyuga found the source of the noise. Perhaps 3 feet above her and flying through the air was a blue-eyed boy about her age, hair the color of the sun, wearing a white t-shirt with a red spiral on it, leaping through the air and grinning wildly. Wow, thought Hinata. The source of the noise landed with utmost confidence and poise a foot in front of Hinata, then lost balance and fell forward to the ground, pushing her down with him. Lying on the ground for the second time that day, Hinata focused on the boy, although it would have been hard not to as his face was only a few inches from hers, smiling away as he pushed himself up with his hands slightly. "Hi," said the boy, not moving. "Sorry, I like jumping around and I didn't see you till it was too late." "You're not hurt, are you?" "He's beautiful. You're nice," he said. "Most girls punch me if I land on them. But I guess you want me to get off now, right?" Hinata trembled, and she quickly said, "No." "Huh?" the boy said. Hinata suddenly felt her cheeks go bright red. "That's strange," thought Hinata. "Is there something wrong with my face? I can't be sick. The compound is very careful about that sort of thing. And no, I'm not hurt." Fortunately, she had landed on her backpack, so she hadn't hit her head, but even if she had, it didn't really matter to her. The only question on her mind was, who was this boy, and what was happening to her face? To her regret, the boy pushed himself further up and stood up in front of her. He held out a hand and she took it, pulling herself up and almost into his arms. So you're okay now?" asked the boy. Hinata nodded, then suddenly remembered why she was here and shook her head. "School. I had to get to school on time." The boy shuffled his feet. Sorry, but I'm pretty sure you can't do that now. School already started 5 minutes before I left." When you left?" asked Hinata. "Where do you live?" "About 20 minutes walk, 5 minutes hop," said the boy, grinning. Hinata brushed herself off, and resolved to learn more about how to get around faster in the future. Jumping as high as this boy could would definitely mean no more crowd trouble. But right now, there was no time. 10 minutes late. If Hiyashi discovers I'm late for school, I don't know what punishment he'll give me. The boy, who had been determinedly counting on his fingers to confirm to himself that 5 plus 5 was indeed 10, suddenly forgot his arithmetic and looked concerned, angry and resolved, all at once. "Who's Hiyashi? If he's hurting you, take me to him and I'll fight him for you." Hinata shook her head rapidly and grabbed the boy's arm, partly for fear, partly for other, rapidly developing reasons. "No, you mustn't. He's a very powerful ninja." The boy grinned. "So am I." What? You're not even older than me." The blonde, far from angered at this statement, simply pointed to the heavens and said, "Half for Hinata's benefit and half for his own." I'll get stronger. Someday I'll be a great ninja. I'll be the Hokage. Hinata privately wondered what exactly he was pointing at, but his determination was still very impressive. She rubbed the side of her neck in shyness. I don't want to be rude, but, who are you? Now it was his turn to be perplexed. She doesn't know who I am. I thought everybody knew. I'm Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki? Naruto winced in expectation of the standard response. Repulsion, widened eyes, and even spitting were not uncommon, but was surprised to see the girl before him smile, bow slightly and say, I am Hinata of the clan Hyuga. I am pleased to meet you, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto laughed, and scratched the back of his head. Well, we'd better go quickly. Can't miss any more school. With this, Naruto began to stride forward, and Hinata quickly fell in behind him, feeling much happier than she had been. He's so determined. I've never seen anyone so open about how strong they are. He'll be the best ninja in the class. Smiling, Hinata Hyuga walked to her first day of school. Iruka Amino stared up at the group of children in front of him and suppressed an urge to sigh. Parents were always going on about how perfect, cute and polite their children were, but this unruly group was going to be difficult. It was only his second year of dealing with such a class, and he'd have them all for the full 6 years. He suddenly realized why Asuma had taken up smoking, stress relief, and briefly considered it himself, before realizing that he coughed excessively if he so much as sat near a heater. There were the usual assortment of ninja from the clans, of course. An Inuzuka, wrapped in a fur coat, strange eyes looking around in excitement and grinning from ear to ear. Iruka didn't expect too much of that kid at first. Inuzukas didn't usually get their dog partners until they were about 10, as he recalled. But he wondered if the boy was planning on wearing fur all year round. Konoha got warm in the summer months. Then there was an Aburame, seated a few rows behind the Inuzuka and stoic as ever. Iruka didn't know the Aburame clan's special technique, but he had heard vague rumors that it had something to do with mind-controlling bugs. Resolving to find out eventually, Iruka moved on. 2/3 of the classic team were already friends. A Nara and an Akamichi were in the row second from the back, one sitting slouched and the other eating chips. Both were talking about something or other, a game of sorts that they seemed to play, although the Nara didn't look like the type to play sports. Iruka then focused on the third part of the Ino Shika Cho team, a blonde Yamanaka girl who was apparently trying to convince everyone she was much older than she actually was. His eyes then flitted around the room randomly. A pink-haired girl. A ponytailed boy. A boy with dark, straight hair. Looks quite like his brother. The door opened to reveal 2 more students. One was a short girl, a Hyuga, blinking shyly through the dark hair that fell in front of her face and clutching her books nervously. The other Iruka knew only too well, Naruto Uzumaki. Hey, Iruka, waved Naruto. We're not too late, are we? Iruka put the roll down. They weren't late. The class had been so long in getting organized and in their seats that nothing had been accomplished yet anyway. However, he still needed to lay the law down, now. Naruto, if you're planning on coming to school every day, you'll need to get here the same time as everybody else. And you'll address me as Iruka-sensei in school time. Naruto nodded. Okay, Iruka. There was a pause, and Iruka coughed. Sensei. The class snickered. Iruka nodded to Naruto, and turned his attention to the girl. That goes for you too, miss. Hyuga, the girl stuttered. The Nara boy rolled his eyes. Pretty sure we guessed that, he said. Not many other people have weird eyes like the Hyuga. The Inuzuka stood up in anger, fist clenched. You got a problem with people with weird eyes, punk? He shouted. Iruka leaned forward. Enough of that. You're here to learn. Sit down. Iruka flipped through the roll and found the Inuzuka's name. Kiba. Kiba scowled at this, but complied, and the Nara boy slouched further, muttering, what a drag. Iruka turned back to the 2 newcomers. Anyway, Naruto, you should get up earlier if you want to make it without running. I didn't run. I jumped here. Believe it. I left home at 8:20 and I got here at 8:30. Iruka frowned. When'd you get up? 8:19. That's not even possible, said the Nara boy. If you got up a minute before you left, you wouldn't have time to eat breakfast or brush your teeth or change your clothes or anything. Nope, said Naruto. Ew, said the class in general. One pink-haired girl tauntingly said. If you just left immediately, why aren't you in pajamas? The students all laughed at this, but Naruto's resolve was only strengthened. When you're a great ninja, there's no time for pajamas. And I'll be the greatest ninja of them all. Believe it, we believe it, said Iruka. Now you and. Her name's Hinata, said Naruto. Iruka tried very hard not to throw chalk at him, and barely succeeded. Hinata can sit down in the front row. And, what's the Nara boy's name? Iruka hazarded a guess. Shikaku? Shikamaru, said the boy. Shikamaru, you're not to say anything unless you've got your hand up. Shikamaru considered this for a moment, held his right hand up, then continued talking to the Akamichi beside him. Iruka resigned himself to a very long day. Kiba Inuzuka sat on a chair outside the head office of the Ninja Academy and tried to not appear too happy at his state of affairs. He had several bruises, his foot hurt, he was bleeding in 2 places and there was mud on his coat. His mother would kill him. She'd paid a lot of money for that coat. Wiping the mud from his face and pulling the hood up further, Kiba sat back and imagined what his punishment would be. He was, admittedly, a little scared, but whatever it was nothing compared to the glory that such a schoolyard battle would bring to him. People would definitely remember him now. He felt no ill will towards his opponent, of course. Despite a general consensus between adults, which was agreed to by their children, that Naruto was weird and annoying, Kiba resolved that if he did beat Naruto up, and that was not unlikely, considering how easy it was to provoke him, it was for his own good. It would make him tougher, or at least teach him to pick his battles better. Or at all. A door nearby opened, and the student in question was frog-marched forward and plonked onto the chair next to Kiba, then left to his own devices. He had an equality of blood and mud all over him, but unlike Kiba his blood was mostly from scars that had already healed. Kiba had noticed directly after the fight that one of Naruto's wounds, a scratch on his arm, was already healing, even as Iruka-sensei was lifting him up to take him inside quickly. For a moment, the 2 boys simply stared forward, both breathing calmly. "Worth it?" asked Naruto, slightly numb from the tooth that the medical ninja had just regrown for him. Kiba thought about this. Worth it. Their mutual appreciation for the fight was broken by the sound of Iruka's door opening. Nodding to each other, they both walked into Iruka's office and sat down. Iruka remained silent, the clock ticking with every second. "So," began Iruka, "you both decided it would be a good idea to start brawling in the middle of the playground." More silence followed, until Naruto spoke. "We were." Naruto looked around for inspiration, saw a book in Iruka's bookcase, and said, "Practicing taijutsu." "Yep, that's what we were doing." Iruka raised an eyebrow. Taijutsu is an art in which a ninja uses carefully calculated strikes against an enemy using their arms and legs. What you did, Naruto, was more of a no-holds-barred brawl using every body part available against a fellow student. Said Naruto, "Kiba wasn't my enemy, though. Kiba was just my opponent. Shikamaru was my enemy." "Shikamaru Nara?" asked Iruka. "Why? What did he do?" "Well," said Naruto, "I was going to sit near that tree with the swing, except Ino and her friend were already sitting there and they wouldn't move, so I left when Shikamaru called me a sissy for letting a girl tell me what to do, so I said I'd fight him. Besides, you heard how he talked to Hinata when we first got into the classroom, Iruka-sensei. He's just a jerk, plain and simple." Said Iruka. "So you were planning on fighting Shikamaru for a lady's honor?" Naruto thought out loud. He hadn't really thought of Hinata as a girl until this point, but he supposed it was true. She was a lady and he was technically fighting for her honor. "Sure, yeah, that's what happened." "Believe it, and then what happened?" asked Iruka. "Well," Naruto continued, "then Shikamaru said that he couldn't fight me so Choji would have to fight me for him. But Choji's too fat, so we were gonna get Shino to do it but he wasn't around, so the only other guy around was Kiba." Iruka turned to Kiba, scratching caked on mud off his coat. "Kiba, is this true?" "Yeah," said Kiba nonchalantly. "And you fought him?" asked Iruka. Kiba nodded. Iruka said, "Didn't Shikamaru insult you earlier today?" Kiba thought on this. "Well, yeah," he said, "but we had a bet on this fight, Iruka-sensei. Whoever won it got to kiss Sakura Haruno." Iruka remained stern, although he thought internally, that was quick. It took a few months before boys starting fighting over any girl with last year's group. "Did Sakura know about this?" No," said Kiba. "We had the fight after school, so I think she went home before it started." "I don't know about you," he said, addressing Naruto, "but I was planning to kiss her tomorrow if I won." "Yeah," said Naruto, conferring, "that makes sense. I'd do that." Iruka leaned forward. "Well, first of all, you can't treat girls as trophies you win. That's not what they're for." Naruto frowned. "Then what are they for?" he asked. "Yeah," said Kiba, interested. "What are girls for?" "Oh gods," thought Iruka. "They're too young for this. Maybe I'm too young for this. I'll tell you later," he said vaguely. "Next year sometime. But right now, both of you aren't to fight each other, or anyone else, again. Am I clear?" The boys both nodded. "It's Sasuke's fault anyway," said Naruto. "Sasuke Uchiha? Why?" asked Iruka. "'Cause all the girls are so obsessed with him," said Naruto. He flapped his arms. "Ooh, look at me. I'm Sasuke. My hair flips around and my clan is powerful. Big deal. I don't see him fighting anyone for a lady's honor, right Iruka? Sensei?" "Nevertheless," said Iruka, "no more fighting from either of you. If you're so keen to learn taijutsu, we start classes on it in a few weeks. You can train there. Now, are you both okay to walk?" "Naruto, has your tooth healed?" Nodded the boy. "Alright, you can both go." As they trudged out of the classroom, Naruto commented, "I say the only decent girl anywhere is Hinata. And maybe a Yame." "Who's a Yame?" asked Kiba. "She works at the Ichiraku ramen bar," said Naruto. The two reached the end of the corridor. "Well," said Naruto, "see you tomorrow." "Yeah, bye," said Kiba. Naruto returned. "Hey, who won?" he asked. "I was kinda too out of it to ask Shikamaru." Kiba sighed. "I think he said we were both losers, and the whole thing was just troublesome." Defeat means friendship. Hinata was rarely sure about anything, but today was different. Today, after weeks and weeks of hearing him, seeing him, being in the same class as him and spending most of the day with him, she was absolutely sure. Shikamaru Nara hated her. It had been the second day of school when she first noticed. She'd left home earlier than she had the first day, much earlier, and had carefully walked to the academy, yawning as she went and wishing she'd brought food. The Hyuga clan usually all ate very formally. From 7 to 8 in the morning, every main house Hyuga member sat in the same, large room and ate breakfast together. This was a chance for members to communicate, organize and socially bond, although as the daughter of Lord Hiyashi, Hinata had a limited ability to participate. Such meals had been tradition for generations, and leaving early from one was unthinkable. Hinata didn't have time to spend a full hour eating carefully and trying not to rouse the attention of the other Hyuga, so she often skipped breakfast completely. Walking carefully through the streets, she finally stopped at the front gate to discover that it was only 7:45 a.m., half an hour until school started. She sat down quietly by the gate and tried to ignore the rumbling in her stomach by watching the scene in front of her. It was nice, actually. The morning mists were collecting on the grass as dew, the sun was vaguely peeking out from the horizon, and there were stirrings of human life as people left their houses for work, some leaping off into the unknown to reach their workplaces. "I wish I could jump around like they can," she thought. "Perhaps Naruto can teach me. Yes, I'd like that. I'll ask him later today." As she thought this, she saw someone walk around the corner. It was another student. That boy who'd talked all through class on the first day. Shikamaru, his name was. As he rounded the corner, he saw Hinata, trying to appear inviting to him. It was only his second day too. Hinata smiled and nodded at him, hoping her hunger didn't make her look angry or strange. He stared at her from a few meters away, then visibly rolled his eyes and turned around, avoiding her completely. He walked over to the far side of the gate and leaned on the wall, looking out at nothing in particular. Hinata looked down sadly. Why would he do that? Have I done something wrong? Maybe he didn't notice me. Maybe I should go and speak with him? But I don't want to annoy him. What did I do? Hunching over in the corner, Hinata realized that not only was she hungry, she was cold as well. A few minutes passed before the next person to arrive appeared. He was dark-haired, wearing a fur hoodie, and had unusual eyes. 2 red markings were on his cheeks, and he was short, although still bigger than Naruto. He's the one that yelled at Shikamaru in class, she thought. Maybe he'll sit with me. Hinata ventured. She was very quiet, but the boy heard her. Kiba Inuzuka looked to his right. Huddled in the corner was the small, quiet girl that had come in with Naruto yesterday, and off in the distance was Shikamaru, leaning against a wall and frowning. Putting 2 and 2 together, Kiba took a step towards Shikamaru and yelled. "Hey, you gonna sit with us?" Shikamaru looked up and gave Kiba the same disdainful look that he'd given to Hinata. "No," he replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. The sound of his answer, quiet as it was, reverberated across the courtyard, and Hinata shivered slightly. Shikamaru could fit a lot of contempt in a single word. Kiba, on the other hand, merely gave a brief gesture or possibly hand seal with his right hand in Shikamaru's direction, and sat down next to Hinata. "You should wear a jacket," he said. "You look really cold." There was a silence, then Kiba muttered something and took his jacket off. He draped it over Hinata like a cloak. It was several sizes too big for her to wear. She took it gratefully, feeling the fluffy parts on her arms. It smelled slightly of dogs, but she didn't mind all that much. "Doesn't your mom tell you to keep warm all the time?" he asked, leaning back again. Hinata mumbled something. "Huh?" asked Kiba. "She's dead," said Hinata quietly. "Oh," said Kiba. "Well, don't listen to Shikamaru over there. He's just a jerk." Kiba gave the boy another look, then continued. "I mean, sure you're a girl, but that doesn't mean it's okay to just leave you there alone and jacketless. That's wrong. My dad always says, you gotta treat girls right." He frowned, then added. "Not sure why, though. Whenever he says it my mom laughs and pushes him over." Hinata looked at him in confusion. "Did Shikamaru avoid me because I'm a girl? No, that doesn't seem right." "Sue," remarked Kiba, "you're friends with Naruto?" "I hope I am," Hinata thought. He said most girls punch him if he tries to get close, but how could they? How could anyone hate him? He's so nice. Too shy to say what she really thought, she instead mumbled something, which Kiba correctly took as confirmation. She was very strange to Kiba. When he was younger, he'd always assumed that girls weren't all that different to boys. After all, his mom and sister did pretty much the exact same things as his dad. This worldview had generally served him well in the past, although his sister Hannah got pretty annoyed when he asked her why she couldn't grow a beard, but it had been broken almost immediately when he'd first gone into the village proper. Seeing girls play clapping games and loudly squealing with each other was so weird that he'd had to ask his mom for confirmation that they were, indeed, girls. He'd expected better of the girls that would be at the academy, but again they disappointed him. Not one of them was interested in fighting, almost all of them were afraid of getting mud on their jackets, and they were just so weird. All of them except for Sakura Haruno. She was still frightened of getting mud on herself and was still uninterested in fighting, true, but Kiba could definitely see why. Her hair was bright pink in a way that you could see from across the playground, and she smelled like nothing else. He'd fought Naruto Uzumaki on Shikamaru's behalf mostly for the fun of it, but he couldn't deny that Sakura Haruno was definitely a good target. That was, of course, until she inevitably opened her mouth. Her voice was so grating. And her forehead was enormous. Driven by such contradictory thoughts, Kiba thought on Naruto's declaration yesterday. That Hinata was the only decent girl anywhere. He wasn't quite so prejudiced, but he agreed that Hinata was certainly nicer than most. "That guy is weird," he declared. "No he's not," she protested. "He helped me get to school yesterday when I was lost. And he said he'd fight Shikamaru for me as well." She looked over at Shikamaru, but couldn't tell if he had any bruises. That's not good, she thought. If he has no bruises, then Naruto can't have won. But no, he must have. He's so determined. "I said weird," said Kiba, "not bad. And, he didn't fight Shikamaru for you. He fought me. Like, I fought for Shikamaru, against Naruto." "You?" asked Hinata. "Why you? I thought you didn't like Shikamaru." "A fight's a fight," shrugged Kiba. "Boys are weird," thought Hinata aloud. "Hey, I'm not weird," said Kiba angrily. "Naruto's the weird one. He challenged every other boy to a fight yesterday. He's lucky I'm the only one," said. "Yes." A silence followed. "Wait," said Kiba. "What's your name again?" "Hinata. Of the clan Hyuga." "Cool," he said. "I'm from a clan too. I'm Kiba Inuzuka." Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden appearance of another boy coming around the corner and into sight. He was quite tall and thin for his age, wearing a white jacket and dark, rounded sunglasses. His voice was like a stage whisper as he addressed Kiba by saying, "You have a very small clan." Kiba glared and clenched a fist. "No I don't. The Inuzuka clan is fine. It's big. Who asked you anyway? How many people are in your clan?" asked Hinata, curious. said Kiba. The other boy said nothing, but stared on expectantly. Kiba hung his head and admitted it. 4, including me. Hinata considered this. Does that count as a clan? She asked, quizzically. I gave you my jacket, said Kiba angrily. And you don't even think I have a clan. I'm sorry, she said reflexively. I'm sure your clan is very powerful. It consists of 3 active ninja, said the glassed boy, and 1 student. Yeah, well. My dad says you eat bugs, Kiba bit back. The glassed boy considered this. No, he replied. We like them, but we don't eat them. Who? Began Hinata, which Kiba interrupted. He's an Aburame, he explained. Hinata did not quite understand this, but didn't want to seem stupid in front of her new friend, so she said nothing. The Aburame, whatever that was, spoke again. Have you considered going around the other way? If you do, there's a room for the teachers. It's much warmer than out here, I don't even need my jacket. He looked at Kiba, then Hinata, then the borrowed jacket she was wearing. Wearing a jacket will keep you warmer, he informed her. That's what I said, shrugged Kiba, with an air of, girls, huh, to his voice. The crouching boy and girl nodded to one another in agreement. Picking his bag up, Kiba stood up to follow the glassed boy. Hinata did the same, wrapping Kiba's jacket around her. They left the courtyard behind, following the glassed boy to a door around the corner that Hinata hadn't noticed the first time she'd passed it. Leaning forward, the glassed boy knocked 3 times, and it opened to reveal Iruka. Oh, hello, said Iruka, thankfully after his morning coffee. Kiba, Hinata, ... Awkwardness permeated the 4. I am Shino, said the glassed boy. Shino, sorry, their teacher apologized. You guys got here pretty early. If this happens often, I'll let you wait in here while it's so cold out. Did anyone else come with you? No, Kiba said. Okay, well, yes, said Hinata and Shino in unison. Iruka turned to Kiba. Kiba, said Iruka. Why would you make one of your friends stay out in the cold on a day like this? 'Cause he's not my friend, said Kiba. He's just an asshole. Iruka rubbed his head. Kiba, don't say that word. Friend? Asked Kiba. No, the other one. Just, he grinned. Iruka frowned. Smartass. Kiba, go and get him. The Inuzuka angrily complied, stomping back to the courtyard. Who is it out there? Asked Iruka. Shikamaru Nara, responded Shino. Thought Iruka. Now I know why Kiba wanted him to stay out. No, Iruka, you're meant to be nice. Just try to keep him quiet. Kiba and Shikamaru returned, the taller boy greeting Iruka casually. Iruka suppressed frowning and greeted him in return. Come on, he said, let's get inside. School starts in a few minutes anyway. Kiba and Shino followed immediately, stepping into the warmth of the room and visibly relaxing, leaving Shikamaru and Hinata by themselves. Here, Shikamaru put his hands in his pockets and walked forward, but as he did, he turned a little. Staring back at Hinata, his eyes went to her face, then down to her borrowed jacket, then up to her face again, staring on with the same vague sneer he had for everything else. Then, for the briefest of moments, his mouth twisted upward to make a smirk. This was far worse than the single syllable, no, that he had said before. He could utterly destroy somebody without saying anything. That was the moment where Hinata began to realize how much Shikamaru Nara hated her. It had been a few weeks since that day, and Hinata had slowly adjusted to her new routine. She would go to school in the morning and spend most of the day frantically taking notes on what Iruka-sensei said and trying to pluck up the courage to tell Naruto that trying to physically battle everyone else in the world was a bad idea. On Fridays after school she'd take the long way home, where Anko Mitarashi would meet her and they'd go eat cinnamon rolls together. Hinata liked Anko. She was more rough around the edges than any of the women in the Hyuga clan, almost like a boy herself, but she was also a lot warmer and friendlier than any other girl Hinata knew. Slowly, Hinata began to call her Anko Nisan, Big Sister Anko, which both surprised and delighted the Jonin. Hinata still hadn't gotten around to buying a jacket, but the weather had been unseasonably warm so it hadn't mattered that much. Classes had progressed a long way farther than she had ever hoped. They were all the way up to their 7 times tables now. Of course, the older students were mostly contemptuous of the younger one's knowledge. A week ago an Uchiha boy in 3rd year had made fun of Hinata for thinking 9 times 8 was 75. But Naruto had valiantly defended Hinata by stepping in and insisting on fighting the Uchiha boy. The ensuing brawl meant that Naruto lost yet another tooth and first-year students were banned from playing with older students, an offense that didn't do wonders for Naruto's popularity, but Hinata was thankful anyway. Thinking about it as the students worked on math problems, Hinata wondered why exactly everybody in the school seemed to hate Naruto so much. The banning of contact with older children wasn't exactly much of a fuss to anyone other than Ino Yamanaka, whose obsession with being mature was almost as strong as Shino's fascination with bugs. But even so, all the other class members regularly informed Naruto that he was a loser and an idiot who would never amount to anything. Naruto always defiantly tried even harder at his studies in response to this, but he mysteriously never seemed to improve. Hinata admired his endless reserves of resolve, and wished she was as certain of her abilities as he was of his. Suddenly, the bell rang for lunch, and many of the students started to pack away their pencils and paper. Iruka stood up from his desk and addressed the class. "Okay, remember everyone, you've got taijutsu class after lunch, so be back 5 minutes early." Hinata groaned. Taijutsu class was one of the things about school that she definitely did not like. It was hard enough learning all the complicated ways to punch, kick or block, let alone applying them in a fight with another person. Sighing again, Hinata went to finish the last few problems, then packed up. As she put her pencils away, she noticed that Naruto himself was still sitting up in the back row of the classroom, staring out the window. This was very strange. Usually Naruto would have been out of the door as soon as the bell went. He had nearly boundless amounts of energy, and it took a lot of running around to burn all of it off. Picking up her pencil case and paper, she left her seat and walked up to the row. After a few moments of nothing happening, she cleared her throat slightly and Naruto looked back at her. "Oh," he thought, "it's Hinata. She's so quiet sometimes it's scary. That girl could sneak up on anyone." "Hey Hinata," he said, waving. "How are you?" Fine," said Hinata. "Hey, are you alright, Naruto?" Naruto looked down at his work. He said, "Yeah, I guess." Hinata shuffled her feet slightly. "What's she talking to me for?" thought Naruto. "Isn't she gonna go hang out with? Hey, come to think of it, Hinata seems to be alone most of the time I see her. I should eat lunch with her. That way, I can ask her about my problem." "Hey," he said, "how about we eat lunch together?" Hinata's eyes widened with joy. "Yes," she said quickly. "And, after that, will you teach me how to jump as high as you?" Naruto was surprised by this. Okay." Gathering his things and following Hinata out, Naruto led Hinata to a shady corner in the courtyard and sat down. Opening their lunchboxes, the children ate their onigiri, Naruto expositing between mouthfuls about how he would beat everyone else in taijutsu class, Hinata listening attentively. He was so certain of how he'd beat Sasuke Uchiha, Choji Akamichi and, Hinata smiled happily, Shikamaru Nara. She then felt bad about this. "I shouldn't think that about Shikamaru," she thought. "I don't know why he's so mean to me all the time, but I hope I can find out, and then whatever I did, I can fix. Kick him in the chest," concluded Naruto. "I mean, Shikamaru's so lazy he'll barely bother to fight back. He'll never get anywhere without working harder." Just as he said this, Shikamaru appeared, stepping out from behind a tree as he spoke in a slow drawl. "At least I know how to count," he said, "and spell. And I don't spend half my life in the hospital wing. You've lost how many teeth now?" "6," replied Naruto angrily. "And you're not supposed to listen to other people's conversations, you know." Shikamaru rolled his eyes. "Not much of a conversation," he said. "You talk, and Hinata sits there shivering like it's the land of snow. You'll never get anywhere because you're an idiot, and Hinata." Hinata gulped and looked away from Shikamaru. "What about Hinata, huh?" shouted Naruto. "What's your problem?" "She's weak," said Shikamaru. "She only sits with you because she thinks she's better than everybody else, and she knows you'll fight anyone that says otherwise." He walked away, hands in his pockets. Naruto stared forward at Shikamaru in disgust. Although he was young, he had long since learned that most of the villagers didn't like him. Many of the other children in the village wouldn't play with him at all, jeering at him whenever he approached. Before school had started he had pretty much wandered the entire village daily, searching in vain for other children on the street who wouldn't curse him or simply run off whenever he appeared. None of this did wonders for his self-esteem, but it did give him a nearly unparalleled knowledge of the town's layout. He'd hoped that things would be different once he started school, But even the students who didn't know him already still all seemed to reject him immediately, telling him he was a freak and an idiot. It wasn't fair. Just because he was still stuck on 3 times tables, Kiba and Izuka couldn't do them that well either. Actually, Kiba wasn't so bad. Rough, somewhat crude and not particularly interested in reading, Naruto would have befriended Kiba immediately if not for his predicament. Remembering disastrous attempts at making friends with Ino, Sasuke, Choji, and in desperation even Shikamaru, Naruto kept his distance from Kiba until he had a stroke of luck. The fight over Sakura on the first day. He'd really been thankful when Kiba volunteered to fight him on Shikamaru's behalf. It saved him from having to approach Kiba in the normal way. Despite the pain that resulted from their first bout, Naruto eagerly challenged Kiba to a fight the next day, and to his surprise the other boy accepted. They weren't quite friends yet, but it was nice to have someone's undivided attention, even if it was for the purpose of beating you up. The situation worked so well for Naruto that he tried it with almost everybody else. It failed with girls, of course, as for the most part they were uninterested in fighting, but unfortunately neither were most of the other boys. Shino spent most of his time alone and staring at anthills. Sasuke studied instead of playing. Choji was more interested in food and Shikamaru was so abrasive Naruto wasn't really interested in being his friend anyway. The only other person Naruto hadn't challenged to a fight was Hinata. He got the feeling that he'd have to go easy on her, she was so timid. Kiba was not Naruto's favorite target because he was an easy opponent, however. He had a very powerful kick and was much bigger than Naruto, factors that all but won him every fight. In spite of this, Naruto still fought him almost every day, and as he fought more and more, he became more and more aware of how Kiba fought, and how to counter it. A punch that hit him one day would be dodged the next. A kick that knocked him to the ground would miss him completely the second time. It was this way he learned how to fight, copying what worked and throwing out what didn't. The idea was nothing new to him. After spending years of his life ignored by other people, Naruto had long tried to imitate their ways, of walking, speaking, everything really. This meant that Naruto had to stand closer to people than was normal so he could mimic them better. It was a trait that annoyed most people, but he didn't care. He had to know how people worked, because however he did things, it was clearly the wrong way. Why else would nearly everybody in Konoha reject him? If he knew how to mimic them, he could be like them, and surely if everybody saw he wasn't so different he'd be accepted. But now that he could fight people instead of simply watching them, he could work out even better how they moved and reacted. Fighting was a much easier way to learn about people, particularly if they automatically assumed you were their enemy anyway. Turning around to speak to Hinata again, Naruto did a double take when he realized that she didn't look so happy anymore. Running over the things that he'd said immediately before, he eventually worked out that she was probably sad about Shikamaru's words. It was a lie, of course. He'd elected not to get too close to Hinata since the incident on the first day. He was well aware that girls' tolerance of his close proximity was small. But even from afar he could tell that she was fairly nice to everyone, even the brutish older children and tormentors like Shikamaru. Naruto's fists balled up. He would have challenged his sardonic classmate to a fight had he not left so soon. I've got to do something, Naruto thought. Hinata's not like me. She believes what that jerk says. Hinata looked at her feet forlornly. She'd been told time and again by her minders that a Hyuga could not show great displays of emotion in public, and as a member of the Hyuga she had to be strong. It was her duty to the clan. She wished she could be like Naruto, shrugging all the taunts of his classmates off like they were nothing and free of her family, but she wasn't that strong. She couldn't escape her clan. I wonder what clan Naruto belongs to, I wonder if I can go join them instead. Naruto's mind raced as he thought of what he could do to cheer Hinata up. What would Iruka do if I were this sad? Give me ramen? No, that's stupid, I don't have any ramen with me, and I'm not sure if Hinata even likes it. He'd hug me. Alright, I'll try that. I've never hugged a girl before. Here goes. Naruto swallowed in preparation. He leaned forward to Hinata, awkwardly put his hands around her and pulled inwards, as Iruka always did. Hinata's eyes widened in shock. It was rare for her to be hugged. Her father had never done so, her minders were forbidden, and Anko preferred to pat her on the head. She wished they all would more often, or at all, because with Naruto's arms wrapped around her she felt better, like Shikamaru's words didn't matter so much. It was almost the same feeling as her mother holding her when she was younger, but at the same time there was something different about it. This is going okay, Naruto thought. Heck, it's not half bad. I wish more girls would be so cool with me hugging them. It was nice for him to be this close to someone without even thinking of studying their movements. Feeling her shivering decrease, Naruto carefully held the girl, grinning as his plan worked. Had he been paying closer attention he'd have noticed that her heart rate had gone up rapidly, but if Sasuke Uchiha was the academy's sharpest knife in the drawer, Naruto Uzumaki was its spoon. Letting her calm down, Naruto then carefully ended the hug. He considered saying, there, but then deemed it unnecessary, and quietly pulled his arms back to his sides, happy that Hinata seemed less likely to cry. Thank you, said Hinata, bowing her head slightly. That's okay, replied Naruto. You shouldn't believe what that guy says. He's a jerk and an idiot. Hinata smiled weakly and nodded. You're nice, Hinata, he said, and you shouldn't let guys like that push you around. He's not the kind of person you want to be like, you know? Be like? I know people think I'm weird, he said, but I won't be forever. Someday, I'm gonna be Hokage, and everybody in Konoha's gonna accept me. I'll be just like all of them. For a second, all the world was still, and then Hinata's heart went into overtime as she grabbed Naruto's arm and quickly, sharply and loudly shouted. No. The unnatural stillness of the air vanished, and Hinata was left with a very shocked-looking Naruto, his arm gripped by hers. Hinata, could you let go of my arm? He asked politely, now a little nervous. How could she move that fast? Hinata gasped a little as she looked down. Sorry, she said, relinquishing her grip on his arm, she said quietly. It's just that, well, the first day, when I was lost, no matter what I did, everybody just passed me by. I know that feeling, thought Naruto. And I only got to school because two people helped me. The first was a kind, brave, very strong ninja. And the other one was you. Naruto frowned. You don't think I'm strong? He asked. No, she said, then corrected herself. I mean, no, I think you're strong. But, I mean, if you and her were like everyone else in the village, you wouldn't have helped me. So, maybe it's good to be like you are now, and people will learn to accept you. Naruto reflected on this for a second. Whoa, he said. Hinata's tears were disappearing. I don't want you to change, Naruto. Was that a selfish thing to think? Was she being obsessive to want him to stay exactly as he was, even though he thought it would mean he'd never be accepted? No, she thought. Someday, everybody in Konoha will see what a great person you are. And you won't have to change at all. Looking deep in thought at this, Naruto looked all the more resolved when he spoke again. You're really smart, Hinata, he said. Can I ask you a question? Of course, said Hinata immediately. Well, began Naruto. See, you're a girl, so you might know, do you? He closed his eyes in concentration, and Hinata sat forward in concern. He trusts me enough to tell me important things. Do you think Sakura Haruno likes me? The words did not echo in Hinata's mind. They slammed into it like an all-piercing arrow, the shock almost winding her. Hinata's eyes blinked more and more as she processed this, while Naruto continued speaking. I want her to be my girlfriend, he admitted. Feeling proud that he'd admitted this vital secret to somebody, Naruto opened his eyes to find nobody. Huh? He verbalized. In front of him was Hinata's lunchbox, clean and tidy, in sharp contrast to Naruto's rice-filled mess. There was a patch of grass that had been flattened where Hinata had sat, and there was a dandelion that she'd been playing with. And yet, the girl herself was gone. Naruto growled. Trust a girl to leave when you really need her, said Naruto in deference to his age's proud history of institutionalized ism, but his heart wasn't really in it. Picking up Hinata's lunchbox along with his own and closing it, he stood up and carefully prodded the dandelion with his foot. Staring up at his classroom window, he saw a clock reading 1:50 p.m. and frowned. Only 5 minutes until taijutsu class. That was nowhere near enough time to fight with anyone. It was some time before Hinata stopped running. She was far away from the academy by the time she slowed down. Wiping the tears that had collected on her eyes as she walked, she found herself in a place full of trees, one that she remembered strongly from her childhood. She and her mother had gone here when she was still alive. Even now, Hinata often returned there when she felt upset. Walking to the tallest tree there was, old, extremely thick, with many branches, Hinata climbed up onto the first branch, then onto the next one, finding a hollow that was about the right size for her. It was smooth, free of dirt or bugs, and Hinata slid into it quietly. From here, she could simply sit and take stock of things. Shikamaru is wrong, she thought. I'm not weak, I just don't. That thought was broken by another one. Naruto said he wanted to be Sakura Haruno's boyfriend. That this troubled her more than Shikamaru's insults intrigued Hinata. Wasn't he so happy when he said it? Hadn't he almost glowed when he admitted that to her, like he'd been given all the ramen in the world? Like he was one massive step closer to becoming Hokage? Why should I feel bad about something, someone, that makes Naruto happy? He's got such a hard life, and he deserves to have someone who's he. This thought made Hinata cry again, not the silent weeping that she'd done before while running, but loud, deep sobs. What was wrong? How could she be crying when something was finally going right for her friend? Suddenly, a voice, male, much older than Hinata, sounded out from above. Other people are using this tree, you know, the voice remarked. Hinata stifled her crying, swallowed and said, sorry, are you crying for a reason, or are you just playing a game? No. I mean, yes, I am crying for a reason. Sorry. The voice shifted above. You've said that already. Hinata concentrated. Yes, I did. The voice said, I usually prefer to be alone, but I might be able to help you with your problem. That is, if you can reach me. Or reach you? Climb up. Hinata looked up. All she saw were branches, no sign of the mysterious other person. I am not sure I can, she said. Go on, encouraged the voice, try it. Hinata swallowed again, wiped her eyes and pulled herself up from her hollow. Breathing out carefully, she began to climb, pulling herself up onto a higher branch. Standing on this one, she looked to two others above, both fairly thin, and chose the one on the right. Gingerly she crept forward, and put a little of her weight onto the right-hand branch with her leg. The branch creaked loudly. Bad idea, she thought, clinging onto the thick branch. She then tried the left-hand branch and found it was much sturdier. Walking across it, she pulled herself further up, finding another branch to bring her even higher. Here, however, the branches stopped for a time, and all there was the blank trunk of the tree and the leaves far above. Hinata breathed in and out and thought on this. Perhaps I could climb the trunk? Stepping towards it, she began to put her hand in a hole in the trunk, then immediately realized there could be spiders or birds in there. Rapidly pulling her hand away, she pulled a pencil out of her pocket and poked it into the hole. When nothing responded, she took the pencil out and put her hand in it. She was fine. Concentrating again, she pulled herself up to the next hole. It was rough, difficult work, and Hinata was very tired by the end of it, but she managed to climb up the trunk into the next set of branches. From here it was easy, and she almost bound up the tree like it was a flight of stairs, finally reaching the tallest, sturdiest branch. All above that was just twigs, basically. Grinning at her success, she called out to the mysterious voice. Mister? She said. I got to the highest branch, but you're not here. Aren't I? Came the voice from behind her. Hinata gasped and turned around to see a tall, gray-haired man, perhaps a little older than Anko, standing upside down on the one branch even higher than hers. He was dressed in a green jacket with a red spiral on it and blue pants, and he wore a Leaf Village headband on his forehead, although unlike Anko's it covered one of his eyes. The uncovered eye looked at her evenly. You're standing upside down, said Hinata in surprise. Yes, the man said, patiently. I originally tried drinking tea upside down as well, but you can imagine how that went. That bird's never really forgiven me. Swinging away from Hinata, the man bent his knees and pushed himself into a sitting position on the branch. He then turned around to face her, his gray hair still pointing upward bouffantly, and spoke. Well, he said, have you forgotten your problem yet? The physical stress of the climb disappeared as Hinata remembered both of her problems, and she sighed. I guess not, said the man. Alright, what is it? It's just, there's a boy in my class who keeps teasing me. And? Said the man. He says I'm weak. Are you? The ninja asked. I don't know, said Hinata. I guess I'm not very good at taijutsu class. And people seem to not always hear me the first time I say something. The man considered this. You're definitely a Hyuga. Because of my eyes? Asked Hinata, wearily. No, because only a Hyuga can look so gracefully downtrodden. The rest of us, well, why do people keep saying that? Asked Hinata. Anko and Iruka-sensei have both said it as well. Why does everyone think my family's different? The gray-haired ninja closed his eyes in concentration. How to explain clan politics to a little girl? Well, he said, your clan is very big, right? It has a lot of members. Said Hinata. It's also very rich, said the ninja, and powerful. Now, do you know of the other clans in Konoha? Yes, said Hinata, like the Inuzuka. The Inuzuka clan is actually a very good example here, said the man. Its members are strong, but it only has 3 actual ninja. Compare that with the Aburame or the Nara, which have maybe 70 members each, or your clan, which has a few hundred. Do you think that maybe the Inuzuka might feel kind of inferior, seeing as they're a legitimate clan but so understaffed? Hinata thought back to the second day of school, and how angry Kiba had been when Shino had suggested his clan was the smallest. You see, the clans are split, said the ninja, based which of the 2 most powerful clans in Konoha they tend to side with, the Hyuga or the Uchiha. The Yamanaka, Nara and Akamichi clans side with the Uchiha, whereas the Inuzuka and Aburame side with the Hyuga. That makes sense, she said. Because Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame are nice to me, but Shikamaru Nara hates me. Maybe, the ninja considered, but it could just be coincidence. The clans only roughly follow that pattern. The Inuzuka might side with the Yamanaka on something, for example. And besides, the clans are more allies than friends. Friends implies they like each other, whereas these alliances are for the clan's benefit. Then we can't be friends, said Hinata. If our clans aren't allies. Oh, I wouldn't say it's as certain as that. And there's more to it as well. See, the Nara are richer than the Inuzuka. Every clan is. But they're still not as influential as the Hyuga or the Uchiha. So, there's friction between the 2 groups. It doesn't help that the Hyuga have a reputation for acting like they own the village. We own a quarter of it, protested Hinata. The ninja raised an eyebrow. You see? Sorry, sensei. The ninja waved a hand. No, that's my point. Sometimes when something frustrates somebody and it's too powerful for them to confront, the frustrated person often takes their anger out on a scapegoat, somebody who can't fight back. Shikamaru Nara is trying to make himself feel better by insulting you because he can't fight the Hyuga clan itself, although what they did to him specifically I can't say. I see, Hinata said. But, how can I make Shikamaru stop insulting me? You just want him to stop? The ninja asked. You don't want revenge on him? And no, said Hinata. I'd rather be friends with him. That's better, isn't it? So innocent, thought the ninja. That's a very naive thing to think, he said, and Hinata saddened. He then continued, but it's a naive thing that's worth fighting for. Hinata was not certain, but she thought she saw him smile under the mask over his mouth. Now, he said, generally, if you want a boy's respect, you should defeat him in battle. That's not exactly possible at your age, but maybe. Taijutsu class. Hinata realized out loud, then started to apologize for interrupting. No, that would work, said the man. If you beat him in taijutsu class, you might well prove to him you're not weak, not a scapegoat, and that not every Hyuga thinks they're better. Hinata nodded, then thought aloud again. I'm not sure I can beat him, though, she said. I'm not very good at taijutsu. Maybe, said the ninja, standing up. But you didn't think you could climb the tree either, did you? With this, he leapt away. Smiling, Hinata climbed down the rest of the way, scrambling down branches, bounding past the hollow and landing on the ground. Yamanaka, Ino, finished Iruka. Here, the roll taken, Iruka set it down and breathed in deeply. In front of him, the expressions of the first-year students varied. Kiba was grinning, Shino stoic, Naruto was determined and Sasuke was stoically determined. Ino and Sakura were both shuffling their feet somewhat, clearly not at all comfortable with the imminent lesson. Choji looked somewhat at a loose end. Iruka had finally successfully convinced him to forego eating for the class, while Shikamaru stared on, bored as ever. Today in taijutsu class, we're going to apply what we've learned so far to fighting again. Can anybody tell me what taijutsu is? Naruto's hand shot up. Iruka-sensei. I know. Shikamaru sneered at Naruto's enthusiasm. What, are you filling in for Hinata? I'm here. Everybody turned around to see Hinata Hyuga, smiling, and standing taller than she ever had for the briefest of moments. The moment then passed, and she quietly looked down and said, Sorry for interrupting, Iruka-sensei. Iruka nodded. Go on, Naruto. Taijutsu is hand-to-hand combat, the main ninja skill. Every ninja has to learn taijutsu before they can learn any other kind of ninja technique. Fairly accurate, said Iruka, although taijutsu is only the beginning of ninja skills, it's really the foundation of everything we learn. Everybody has to learn it first. Thought Hinata. Why taijutsu? The other techniques don't seem so hard, but I suppose every ninja has to be good at fighting. Now, what style of taijutsu have we learned so far? Asked Iruka. Sasuke Uchiha's hand went up. Yes, Sasuke? Iruka-sensei, we've learned Whirling Leaf Taijutsu, the standard taijutsu of Konohagakure. Correct, Sasuke. Naruto was heard to quietly mutter, show off. Iruka pulled out a list. We're now going to spar. I've ranked every member in the class in terms of fighting ability. You'll be paired up with someone of a similar level to you, and you'll practice using the Whirling Leaf Taijutsu. If you want to stop at any time during sparring, say, I admit defeat, and the fight will be over. Iruka then began to call out names, and one by one the students left. Hinata zoned out until he called out, Uzumaki, Naruto. You're fighting Choji Akamichi. Huh? Naruto looked confused. Iruka-sensei, I want to fight Kiba. We're about equal at fighting. Iruka sighed. Naruto, you fought with Kiba yesterday, and the day before that. The only reason you didn't fight the day before that was because it was the weekend. We fought on Sunday as well, said Naruto defensively. And Saturday? Asked Iruka dryly. Not Saturday, said Naruto. Kiba was out with his family. Yeah, about that, said Kiba, awkward. I was kind of fighting somebody else. What? Asked Naruto in anger. How could you do that? I thought we agreed to fight each other at least once a day. Look, fighting you is good and everything, but I don't want to get stuck in a rut where I only fight one person forever, said Kiba. How could you say that? Asked Naruto indignantly. I still prefer fighting you. Kiba protested. Well, it's nice to hear that sometimes, said Naruto, upset. Naruto, you're fighting Choji, said Iruka decisively. Kiba, you're fighting Shino. Shino Aburame? Asked Kiba. He's weird. Just go to the practice mats, said Iruka wearily, and continued until he reached Hinata's name. Hinata Hyuga, you're paired with Sakura Haruno. Shikamaru Nara, you're paired with Ino Yamanaka. What? Asked Ino. He's a boy. Well spotted, noted Shikamaru. Shikamaru is the lowest ranked male student in terms of taijutsu ability, said Iruka. Sensei, said Sakura, who's the lowest ranked girl? Iruka consulted the list and said, let's not worry about that for now. Just practice, and have a try, and stuff. Iruka stepped away. Good, thought Hinata. Once I defeat Sakura, I must fight Shikamaru, and I can't fight Shikamaru. I probably can't even fight Sakura. Sakura. Naruto's, N. Hinata closed her eyes for a few seconds, stifling another sob that was rising up from her throat. Swallowing, she opened her eyes again, and suddenly the entire world went different for a second. A hole appeared wherever she looked. Staring at Iruka's back, she could see the ranked list of students. Her eyes scanning down the list, she saw the last few names. 6. Ino Yamanaka. 7. Sakura Haruno. 8. Hinata Hyuga. There were none below those. Sharply breathing in, the world returned to its normal shade, and Hinata was left with one realization. I am the worst in the class, she thought. What is it? Asked Sakura. I'm the lowest ranked girl, said Hinata quietly. How do you know? Asked Ino. Well, I saw the other side of the list earlier, Hinata lied quickly. Well, commented Shikamaru, I guess we're finally equal, huh? With this, he walked away. Ino shrugged and followed him, leaving Hinata and Sakura to face one another. Hinata bowed. Good luck, Sakura, she said. You're wishing me good luck at beating you? Asked Sakura. Hinata considered this. Oh, yes, she said. Whoops, that's weird, thought Sakura. Usually Hinata apologizes for everything. They walked to their practice mat and stood at either end, looking at one another and trying to ignore the other students fighting. This mat is all there is now, thought Hinata. All there is, and the only thing that matters now is that I don't lose immediately. Sakura placed one foot forward. Hinata did the same. Through an unspoken agreement, the fight began. It started with a quick, jabbing kick from Sakura that Hinata barely dodged, the pink-haired Kunoichi's leg flying past her stomach and into the air as she leaned sideways to avoid it. Hinata then struck forward and Sakura pulled back, blocking Hinata's punch. Both breathing out quickly, they traded blows and this time both of them connected. Sakura was hit in the arm, Hinata in the chest. Hinata was pushed backwards by the blow, falling to the mat. She's so much stronger than me, thought Hinata. No wonder Naruto wants her to be his girlfriend, he's obsessed with fighting. How can he love me when I'm the lowest raw? Love? Hinata's eyes widened, and she made no movements. Sakura looked on in concern. Hinata? Are you okay? Do you want to stop? Love? What? How could I? He's nice, yes, but he's, Love? Suddenly, everything that Shikamaru Nara had ever said to her was replaced by everything she'd ever seen Naruto Uzumaki do. Everything he'd ever said to her or to anyone else. The stupid things, the happy things, the sad things. And those bright flashes of brilliant wisdom that he always pulled out at the last minute, the last second even, because she knew that somewhere under all that bright yellow hair and goofy, repeatedly regrown smile was a boy who was nearly perfect. Nobody else in Konoha could see this. Nobody else could see. The feeling welled up inside of her heart for so long it felt like centuries, but then it changed. It spread from her heart to her head, where it got so warm and so bright, and then it flew forward to her eyes, glowing, brilliant, radiant like the sun. Hinata's vision flashed. Her hands clasped together in a seal, and a single word broke free of her lips. Byakugan. Her vision blurred again, but then it became clearer, and everything was visible. Two boys fighting, in front of her. Ino and Shikamaru fighting, behind her. Iruka standing far away, behind Ino and Shikamaru. Every speck of dust floating in the afternoon air was visible to her, and she honestly felt that if she practiced this power, she would be able to see everything in the world. Hinata? Said Sakura. Your eyes are all vain. Why? Are you doing a ninjutsu? Hinata sharply breathed out, and the world went back to normal. She sat on the practice mat, blinking and thought. I don't know, she admitted. Well, said Sakura, I'm gonna go take a break for a moment, k? Hinata could not help but notice that this break coincided with the victory of Sasuke Uchiha against Kiyoshi Kanoko. Nodding in acceptance, Hinata watched as Sakura walked off to speak to Sasuke. She then heard Ino Yamanaka rapidly say, I admit defeat, then race off after her friend. Hinata stood up and looked back to the practice mat behind her to see Shikamaru standing alone, still with a look of contempt in his eyes. Here's my chance, she thought. She stepped forward to speak to him, but he noticed her looking at him first. What? He asked her. She began. TCH, he said, rolling his eyes. That's another thing. You always speak so quiet so people ask you to say things twice so you get more attention. It's really low of why. Fight me. Hinata burst out. Shikamaru looked confused. Huh? She tried again. Will you fight me? Shikamaru's brows knotted together in thought for a few moments. Then he shrugged. I guess? This is not quite what I'd hoped for, thought Hinata. I hope I don't lose immediately. No. I have to win. If I win, then Shikamaru will respect me, and maybe Naruto will see how good I am at fighting and… well, we'll see how much he cares about Sakura Haruno after that. Hinata bowed to Shikamaru and dropped into a fighting stance. Shikamaru sighed and lazily stepped into a similar stance, apparently weary despite the fact that Ino was a pushover. Let's get this over with, he said annoyedly. I don't know why he said that, thought Hinata. He's the lowest ranked boy. Then again, I'm the lowest ranked girl. For a moment, all was still. Then Shikamaru stepped forward quickly, eyes still on Hinata, shifting slightly from foot to foot. She crouched slightly and returned his gaze. Still shifting, Shikamaru breathed out slightly, and it all started with a kick. Hinata gasped out with pain as the kick hit her in the side and knocked her off balance. She had reacted fast, but not fast enough. Stepping back, she crouched again, legs wide to give a strong base of attack. He struck again, this time with the other leg, air whooshing around it as it flew just over Hinata's head. Hinata struck him in the chest with her right hand, palm open, putting him yet further off balance. What was she doing? She withdrew her palm and crouched again, but this time she was not still. Kneeling and turning around at the same time, her left leg swept across at Shikamaru. She's trying to sweep my legs, thought Shikamaru. Clever. He jumped up to avoid Hinata's leg. Jumping up again after he landed, He kicked down at Hinata's shoulder, making her cry out in pain and fall over completely. Sprawled on the ground, Hinata breathed heavily as Shikamaru landed, then stepped a little further back. "Do you admit defeat?" he suggested. "I should," thought Hinata. "He's better at taijutsu than I thought. If he's the worst boy in the class at it, what chance do I have against any of the others, against Naruto?" The thought of Naruto brought strength to Hinata, and she got up again, struggling to her feet. "I don't believe it," he said. "Do you have a death wish? You're not going to kill me," she asserted. Shikamaru laughed. "I guess the Hyuga don't teach you metaphors," he said. Hinata kept her stance but spoke again. "Shikamaru, why do you hate me so much?" He shook his head and smirked. "Hate you? I don't hate you. You're not worth hating. You're just a waste of my time." Hinata's eyes wavered. "I can't change what he thinks. I can't, I." "What, are you going to cry now?" asked Shikamaru. "I won't let him beat me. I can't let him say that. I'm not weak." More resolved than ever, Hinata stopped crouching. Standing up straight, she waved her fringe out of her face and stood in her same fighting stance. "No," she responded, "I'm going to beat you." Shikamaru sighed in annoyance again, and took his stance. Hinata wiped one of her eyes and smiled. "Good luck," she said. Again, Shikamaru began the fight with a kick, but this time Hinata was ready. Dodging past it with a speed she'd never before managed, she responded with a punch of her own, a strike to the chest that made Shikamaru stumble back and almost fall himself, only narrowly regaining his balance. Where'd that come from? He thought out loud. Reservedly, careful of Hinata's newfound strength, Shikamaru put his left foot forward again and focused on his opponent. She was still standing there, ready to fight, but she had not struck him while he was off balance. That had been decent of her. Something had changed within Hinata Hyuga, and he wanted to find out what it was. Bowing slightly, Hinata and Shikamaru's fists flew as they joined in battle once more. A few mats over, Sasuke Uchiha was leaning against a wall, trying to avoid the attentions of Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno. Both were sitting quite close to him, staring adoringly upward as he tried to ignore them and focus on the wall in front of him. He wasn't sure exactly why girls were so interested in him. His minders had only laughed knowingly when he asked them. But he still had to deal with their nonsense on a daily basis. There was apparently something called White Day coming up in a few months that every girl was talking about, and from his studies he'd discovered that the exchange of cards, gifts and kissing were all important parts of the holiday. He thought it all seemed pointless. A card was a waste of paper that might be used for taking notes, gifts were only good for pleasing other clans, and kissing, well, he'd never experienced it but it seemed a very odd activity to him. Glancing down worriedly for a moment at Sakura and Ino, he realized that they might even try to kiss him, an idea that admittedly intrigued him, but for research purposes, of course. His train of thought was broken by the quick arrival of Kiba Inuzuka. Kiba was a stockier, rougher boy than Sasuke, and his mother had warned him repeatedly not to play with him. Sasuke wasn't about to. Kiba was sort of an idiot. Other boys his mother warned him away from were Naruto Uzumaki, who was so impulsive he'd knocked himself out in his bout with Choji, Neji Hyuga, who was apparently very dangerous despite being only 7, and Shikamaru Nara, who mostly just insulted everybody. He was also told not to speak with Hinata Hyuga, a quiet girl that seemed very smart, but in his opinion she was little but a scaredy cat, so this wasn't much of a loss. "Everybody," Kiba announced to the world at large, "Hinata's fighting Shikamaru." This brought the class attention to the dog ninja, who grinned happily at the news. "Hinata's fighting?" asked Sakura. "Hinata never fights. Neither does Shikamaru." Kiba pointed away to the duo's mat, where the children were trading blows at considerable speed. "Huh," said Sakura, surprised. "Who cares about fighting?" asked Ino out loud. "The real important fight is over, right Sasuke?" "Actually, I kind of want to watch this," said the Uchiha boy. He was curious to see what could have inspired the scaredy cat to finally challenge Shikamaru. "Good idea, Sasuke," said Sakura. "Let's go." Kiba, Sasuke and Choji left their practice mats, Ino and Sakura squabbling as they went. Naruto finally sat up. "Hey," he said, "what's going on? Where you all going?" The children that would have told Naruto were too far away, or otherwise occupied, and the children that wouldn't have told him didn't, so his question hung unanswered in the air. With no response forthcoming, Naruto got up and ran to join the crowd of students standing around a practice mat. He didn't get it. Who was fighting who? Hinata and Shikamaru. I'm glad she's okay. But where did she go, and why is she fighting him now? Ah, who cares, as long as Shikamaru loses I'm happy. Go Hinata. Naruto cried out. Kick his butt. His words of encouragement fired Hinata up further, and she struck again at Shikamaru, fist flying through the air towards his shoulder. Sliding back, he charged again, feet and arms narrowly missing Hinata as she dodged and blocked them. What happened to her? He thought. No girl's this good at fighting. Shikamaru slashed at the Hyuga with his arm and once again met with nothing but air. Cursing, he tried to block a kick from her but ended up sliding back and falling to the ground. He breathed in and out rapidly. Was that sweat forming on his brow? He couldn't believe it. He was actually working in taijutsu class. Looking back up at his opponent, he realized that she didn't seem to particularly care that he was on the mat. Not once had she invited him to give up, as he had suggested with her. All she ever did was smile, not smirk, smile, at him, encouragingly. She wasn't taunting him by letting him get up over and over. She was trying to prove something to him, and maybe to herself. What's your motive? He asked aloud, half to himself and half to her. You've knocked me down about 3 times now, but you've never told me to give up. Why you shouldn't give up, she responded, still standing quite tall. Watching a few meters away, Sakura commented to Ino. That girl's got a problem with encouraging her enemies. Hearing this, Hinata looked to Sakura and said, he's not my enemy. He's my classmate and we should help each other. The class, formerly rowdy and interested in the fight, fell silent at this. As they pondered it, Hinata walked over to Shikamaru and held out her hand. Acting cautiously, Shikamaru looked from her hand to her face and back again. There was no treachery in her eyes, he knew that. Shikamaru carefully grabbed onto Hinata's hand and was pulled up. Surprised again at her strength, he leaned over and looked down at her again. I admit defeat, he said. There rose an almighty cheer from the assorted crowd of other students. Naruto and Kiba headbutted in satisfaction. Choji opened the chocolate bar he'd hidden in his shoe to celebrate, and Sakura and Ino looked oddly proud at Hinata's success. Even Sasuke Uchiha had to admit, Hinata Hyuga was kind of cool. For a scaredy cat, you were careless, Aurora Hyuga accused. Struggling hard not to tell the Hyuga where exactly he could stick it and mostly succeeding, Iruka leaned on his desk and sighed. I told you, he said, I just had to leave them for a few minutes. Some older genin were trying to sneak beer onto school grounds. Aurora snorted at this. A clan member of the main house, Aurora was tall and thin, even for a Hyuga, which was to his advantage as he could easily look down his nose on virtually everybody. Dressed in the omnipresent Hyuga robes, he saw straight-backed in his chair and observed Iruka with a combination of contempt and polite interest. Most of them were done fighting anyway, continued Iruka. And I didn't expect Hinata of all people to challenge Shikamaru. Indeed, confirmed the clan member. Hinata leaves much to be desired as the clan heir. She suffers from both a lack of confidence and a lack of propriety. Thinking of the girl who apologized for virtually everything, Iruka wondered what exactly Aurora's standards for propriety were. She is known to be the worst at taijutsu in her class, said Aurora, and yet she quite successfully defeated the Nara clan member using whirling leaf form, is that correct? Iruka nodded. How is that possible? Asked Aurora. Shikamaru is the lowest ranked boy in the class, explained Iruka. Even so, stated the Hyuga, there is no valid reason for why she was able to defeat him now and not earlier. If she has shown no proficiency in previous taijutsu classes, how could she do so spontaneously here? Whirling leaf is a fairly simple style, admitted Iruka. Maybe it just finally clicked for her. A simplistic style is easily predicted, criticized Aurora. It's also easier to learn, replied Iruka, defensively. These children are 6 years old. They're not going to be taijutsu masters at this stage in life. They cannot become adequate at taijutsu without a thorough grounding in full, complex styles, lectured Aurora. If Hinata is to lead the main house with the dignity and ability it requires, she must learn more difficult forms. After all, if she could pick up whirling leaf spontaneously. I don't think that's why it happened, began Iruka, but Aurora had already stood up. Thank you, Iruka, said the Hyuga minder. I am sure that Hinata will progress sufficiently now that you have brought this to my attention. Iruka looked down at his desk and tried not to glare. The sheer arrogance of that bastard. He didn't know what went on in the Hyuga compound, but he was deeply concerned for Hinata's future training. Still, from the descriptions of the fight he'd gotten from the other students, she had fought amazingly. Once she'd gotten going, Shikamaru had apparently barely touched her, and several students had stressed that he really did seem to be trying to win. Meanwhile, outside Iruka's office, Hinata sat on a chair, her legs dangling above the ground. She quietly stared forward, slightly bruised from her bout but still happy at her success. Hearing the sound of voices coming down the hall, she looked up to see Kiba, Naruto and Shikamaru. The two shorter boys were walking beside Shikamaru, as if escorting a prisoner. "Hey, Hinata," said Kiba. "He said he wants to talk with you." He gestured with his head to Shikamaru, who stepped forward slightly. Hinata pulled her feet up onto the chair, curled up as if in a ball. Sighing, but refraining from stating what a drag this was, Shikamaru spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, looking anywhere but at Hinata herself. "You're not weak. I don't think I would have held out as long as you did, myself." Shikamaru looked back down at the ground and shuffled his feet a little. Hinata nodded and made a very quiet noise, which Shikamaru took to be an acceptance of his apology. Carefully walking away, the three remaining students who were left all watched him go, then turned their attentions to each other. Kiba looked to Naruto, then Hinata. They both look sad, he thought. That's weird. Naruto loves watching fights almost as much as he loves being in them, and Hinata just won. You'd think they'd be talking about things a low. Suddenly, Kiba thought back to what had happened at lunchtime. Naruto had disappeared for a while, but he'd later been spotted sitting next to Hinata and eating lunch with her on a small hill. Normally, minor teasing would have ensued once both of them had returned from lunch, but Hinata's unusual absence and depressed-looking demeanor meant that nobody quite had the heart to sing the "sitting in a tree" song at either of them. Glancing from the blonde boy, who was scratching the back of his neck in awkwardness, to Hinata who was all bunched up in her seat, Kiba finally came to the right conclusion. They like each other, he thought. He must have caught cooties off her or something. Still, better get out before I get infected, give them some alone time. Well, he said, yawning dramatically, I have to go and get some new dog collars. Both of his fellow students looked at him as if he were mad. He laughed nervously. Yeah, bye. The jacketed boy quickly left the corridor, humming to himself. The two now alone, they spent a good 30 seconds almost catching one another's gaze but just missing before Naruto spoke. Hinata, said Naruto. Are you okay? Hinata looked up at him, trying not to cry. Naruto immediately started speaking very quickly. It's just at lunchtime you left and I wasn't sure why and I was really worried and I couldn't find you anywhere and then you came back for taijutsu class and you were really strong and awesome and I liked how you fought Shikamaru. Hinata tried to focus. I want to tell him how I feel now. She began, but suddenly the door opened. Aurora Hyuga stepped out of Iruka's office and looked down at the watery-eyed girl curled up on a chair. His violet eyes then wandered over to a short boy with bright blonde hair and a light t-shirt. The container of the nine-tailed fox, thought Aurora. Surely they're not. The boy scratched the side of his head again. I'll go now, he said nervously, cautious of Aurora's piercing gaze. Hinata looked sad at this, but quietly accepted it. Come along, Hinata, said Aurora. Tomorrow, you begin your gentle fist training. Gentle fist, thought Hinata. The clan taijutsu, but I'm still the worst in my class. Slowly standing, Hinata reluctantly began walking down the hallway. Aurora hovered the customary few steps behind her, watching to make sure she made no errors of judgment. She had not quite reached the door, however, when Naruto called out again. Hey, wait, he shouted. Hinata turned to see him running towards her. He stopped just in time to avoid running into either Hyuga, and pulled a small lunchbox from his pack. This is yours, he explained. You didn't get it after you, well, yeah, here it is now. Handing her the lunchbox, Naruto beamed. Hinata knew that this lunchbox wasn't all that special. After all, the Hyuga probably had hundreds she could just take, but she knew how much it meant to Naruto. Thank you, she said, her stutter breaking out again. Nodding cheerfully, Naruto turned to leave, walking the other way down the corridor. Hands in his pockets, he felt happy that Hinata had finally taken Shikamaru down a few notches. It seemed that finally, the weird, shy girl was coming into her own. And what she'd said about not being like everyone else, well, he'd never expected Hinata to be so wise. Hinata didn't notice, but even as she watched Naruto walk away, a feeling welled up inside of her. Not unlike the warmth she had felt when she first used the Byakugan, it spread from her heart to her hands, but there it stopped. Instead of making a hand signal, it stayed in only her 2 index fingers. Slowly, carefully, the fingers touched, and they moved a fraction inwards, flexing subtly. She would not realize this until someone pointed it out to her, but this was the first time she would do this. For the first time, but certainly not the last, Hinata smiled and watched Naruto Uzumaki walk away. There are concepts in worlds that are as old as existence itself. They repeat themselves over and over in cycles, rising and falling, like the very breath of reality. They are common to all worlds, all places where anything lives. Death, love, joy and sorrow are ones you may know of. Others are beyond the scope of my ability to explain. But there is another concept. It is not one that you would see or hear or taste or even experience in this world. It is not a thing that could happen in this place, or even the other worlds that brush up against ours from time to time. It is not a concept that many places could sustain. But in that world, that place, where all that happens here is not mere words, the concept lives. And sometimes, it awakens. It was the day after the Genin exams, but Hinata was not celebrating. Shuffling through Konoha's busy streets alone, the quiet dark blue-haired girl tried to smile and nod politely when she passed others, but she couldn't quite bring herself to do it. She had passed the exams well enough. In terms of the written test, she was one of the highest-ranked students, and she had performed all ninjutsu admirably. Her taijutsu score was quite low, however, she had only won one of her 2 matches, and that was because she'd been lucky enough to fight Ino Yamanaka. The cold stare and silent acceptance when she had told reminders of her success had hurt Hinata, but the real pain came before when she watched Naruto Uzumaki sitting on the swings, alone and isolated from everybody else. I wish Anko was here, thought Hinata. She would know what to do now. The older Kunoichi had told Hinata that she would return from her mission on the day of the Genin exams, but Anko had not been present in the crowd of parents and students that had gathered out in the schoolyard. Hinata supposed that Anko might not want to talk to the other parents. She was not particularly eloquent in small talk, but she had at least hoped her adoptive older sister might meet up with her after the crowds had disappeared. Alone, Hinata didn't think she had the courage to approach Naruto, to tell him that he was the greatest person she knew, even if he didn't pass the exams. If Anko had been there. And yet, Naruto had disappeared swiftly as the wind the second time Hinata got a chance to look at him. He had been such a huge part of her life since the day she had beaten Shikamaru and realized how important Naruto was to her, and now she had lost him. When even Naruto's endless optimism and energy couldn't make him a ninja, how could she do it? Walking silently down the street, Hinata Hyuga would have completed her circuit of Konoha, then returned to the Hyuga compound. She would have found out that Naruto did pass the exams, in a sense, in a few days, and she would have been happy, even if it was only for a moment. She would have sadly resigned herself to only seeing him occasionally, and she would have spent the next few months as she was now disheartened and meek. But that day, there was a gust of wind. All it took was a few seconds, but the gust that swept through Konoha waved open a pair of curtains, and swiftly the orange light of sunset flooded Naruto's room to the point where further sleep was impossible. It ended as soon as it began, the wind dying down again quickly, but the change was made. Naruto should have slept for much longer, but here, he woke up. Thought Naruto as he rubbed his eyes. What's wrong? I'm not wearing my pajamas or my sleepy hat. Naruto pulled his hand out from under his back, and realized he was still wearing his clothes from last night. That alone was unusual. Ever since Sakura Haruno had teased him for not owning pajamas on the first day of school, he had steadfastly changed into them every night, although a niggling feeling in the back of his mind insisted that he could sleep in longer the next day if he just wore his daytime clothes to bed. He worriedly felt his forehead for his trademark goggles, but his hand was left wanting, his forehead covered only by a smooth strip of cloth and metal. Cloth and metal? Eyes widening, Naruto sat bolt upright, threw off the covers that Iruka had carefully tucked him into, and dashed to his bathroom mirror. His reflection stared back at him, its skin and hair dirty but with no visible scratches. Upon his head was a Leaf Village headband, glinting in the fading light of the day like a crown. Seeing the leaf symbol in that dazed state between consciousness and sleep suddenly brought Naruto to life again, and he remembered everything that had happened last night. He'd beaten Mizuki, saved Iruka and returned the scroll. He'd proven them all wrong. He'd cleared the first massive step to becoming Hokage. The resulting, woohoo, could be heard from the opposite side of the village. Rushing out to the balcony outside his house, Naruto shouted to the streets below. "I'm a ninja. A real ninja. In your face, Konoha." The crowd below either ignored Naruto's bellowing or jeered nastily at him, but he ignored them out of habit and instead focused on the one person far below that seemed to be happy about his success. A short girl with dark blue hair that had been walking near Naruto's apartment stopped in her tracks and stared up at him, violet eyes radiating happiness. "Naruto, you passed." Hinata looked up at the small, scruffy-looking boy and truly smiled, for the first time in many days. Gazing up at him peacefully, she was then immediately taken aback by what he did next. "Hey, Hinata," he shouted down at her. "I passed. He's talking to me. I had to say something." "Great, Naruto," she stammered loudly, trying not to blush furiously. "Oh, brilliant, Hinata," she thought. She was never cuttingly sarcastic to anyone else, but within her own mind she figured it was fair game. "Let's get ramen together," said Naruto. "What?" asked Hinata. He drooped a little. It figured, of course, he'd been turned down by friends before. Putting on his usual brave attitude, he said, Okay, if you don't want to." "No," Hinata shouted. "I mean, yes, I'll get ramen with you." "All right," thought Naruto. Of course, I never thought Hinata wouldn't go get ramen with me. Not for a second. She's the nicest person ever. "Okay," said Naruto. "I'll be down in a min." Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks, nose twitching a little. Hinata thought this was unbearably adorable and concentrated very hard on not squeeing, while Naruto wondered. "I smell really bad," he thought. "I guess that's what happens when you spend a whole night running away from a guy and then you beat him up. Maybe I should shower first." I might need more time," said Naruto, scratching his head. "I kinda stink right now." Hinata tried to prevent herself from giggling insanely. "I'm gonna take a shower," Naruto said, "but you can wait in my room till I'm done. I'll leave the front unlocked for you." He gave the thumbs up. She nodded, lacking the composure to say anything at that point. Naruto, showering? Were Hinata a boy, she would have suffered from a nosebleed. Instead, she began to feel lightheaded as Naruto turned and walked back into his room. Annoying as it was for her, this always happened when she had thoughts like this. Breathing in and out slowly, she concentrated on thinking the most unromantic thoughts possible as she walked up the stairs of the building Naruto's room was in. Iruka-sensei's lectures, the Hyuga elders playing ping-pong, cinnamon rolls, Naruto covered in cinnamon no. Whirling leaf, drooled too. Ram, snake, tiger. Ram, snake, tiger. Reaching the top of the stairs, Hinata came to an open door. The room it led to, very much like its owner, smelled of sweat and miso and a very particular type of jacket fabric. Hinata cautiously stepped in. Naruto had invited her to wait there, so it wasn't technically trespassing, but she was still a little nervous. The apartment was very, very small. Hinata's room was about 4 times bigger. In it was a table, a fridge and a kettle, with assorted cutlery spread out all over every available horizontal surface. Naruto's dirty clothes lay in a heap. A pile of well-worn textbooks sat in the corner, and a few comic books and other periodicals with names like Real Ninja Stories magazine were scattered across the floor. Standing upright next to the fridge, Hinata carefully picked up the closest issue of Real Ninja Stories magazine and flicked through to one of the stories. It had apparently been written by Karui Kanshisha, and was filled with the improbable adventures of a rogue ninja called Okachize of the North. Hinata began to read the story and quite enjoyed it, despite the overblown narration and omnipresence of underdressed princesses who needed rescuing by Okachize, but she quickly put the magazine back in its place when she heard Naruto approaching. He was dressed in his usual orange outfit, but she had to admit he looked more grown-up than usual with his leaf headband affixed firmly to his forehead. "Sorry that took a while," he said. "I had mud all over me." "That's all right," said Hinata. I read one of your magazines. It was half making conversation, half an admission of guilt, but instead of prompting him to say something, it made Naruto look very nervous. He said, which one? Real ninja stories, she got out. Naruto visibly relaxed. Good, he said. Yeah, Real Ninja Stories is pretty cool. Do you read it usually? No, she admitted. Oh, okay, Naruto said. He put his hands into his pockets and went to the door, Hinata following. Taking his keys out for the door, he thought aloud. Like, if a girl was into Real Ninja Stories though, that'd be the coolest thing ever. Hinata immediately resolved to take out a subscription. Ayame smiled as she served the ramen to the old man, who accepted it with a curt nod and left. She was not happy because he was a good customer. He complained about the service whenever he came to Ichiraku. Her grin was because Ichiraku was making exceptionally good profits lately, maybe even good enough that she might be able to leave for another land soon. Like all teenagers, she was yearning to get her own place to live in, perhaps in an entire other city, but she had to sell a lot of noodles to make hiring another hand a real possibility for Tucci. So she was understandably pleased when Naruto Uzumaki, aka he who eats nothing else but ramen, showed up, accompanied by what she assumed to be a friend. Hi, Ayame, said Naruto fondly. I'll have my usual, please. What do you want, Hinata? The girl beside him, a Hyuga, mumbled something. He looked confused and leaned in closer to her while she blushed and looked away. Turning to Ayame again, Naruto asked, Ayame, what kind of ramen should Hinata have? Ayame cleared her throat. Naruto could be such an idiot. Why don't you introduce us, first? The realization hit Naruto's face like a wet, undercooked bun. Oh, yeah, Hinata, this is Ayame. She's been selling me ramen for a really long time. And Ayame, this is Hinata Hyuga. She's my classmate. He nodded, then added. Actually, wait, no, she's not my classmate anymore. Now that we're genin, we won't be in the same class anymore, so I guess we're friends. His words resonating in her mind, Hinata suddenly felt conflicted by this. Of course, she had realized from the start that they couldn't be in the same class forever, but the reality of it had only just sunk in. Naruto might have passed the genin exams, but that was no guarantee that they'd be placed on the same squad. Still, he had said that they were friends. Ayame slapped him lightly on the head for this. Don't be stupid, she said. Of course you're friends. She looked to Hinata. Not like most Hyuga, she thought. For one, she's pretty damn shy. For another, she's actually sort of adorable. Smiling at the girl, Ayame asked, Hinata, do you eat much ramen? Hinata shook her head. Most elders of the Hyuga considered it a vulgar meal of the masses. Alright, Ayame said kindly, we'll start you off with some shio. It's nice and light. Shio? Whined Naruto. That's baby ramen, Ayame. He started to notice Hinata slump in her seat. Whoops, he thought. I forget how easy it is to make Hinata sad. But, good start, he said. Sometimes I eat shio between miso bowls so one tastes the miso even more. So it's actually pretty good. Hinata nodded quietly. Man, why's Hinata always so down? He thought. Is it 'cause she doesn't like me? But when most people don't like me, they look annoyed. Hinata just looks all sad and scared at the same time. I gotta cheer her up. Hey, he said, I didn't mean it about that baby ramen thing. She nodded and he continued. I mean, you've never even had ramen before. That's really, really amazing. He shook his head in disbelief. Amazing? She asked. Neither she nor anything about her had ever been called amazing by anyone before. Yeah, he confirmed. I pretty much live off it. Not ever having ramen would be like. Suddenly, a thought crossed Naruto's mind, and he stopped beaming so widely. He frowned in perceived disgust and said, wait, would baby ramen be, like, ramen made of babies? Naruto immediately covered his mouth with his hand, but it was too late. Hinata's expression was wide-eyed surprise, even more expressive thanks to her lack of pupils. Made of. Hinata's mouth quivered. Naruto didn't move that much, but he suddenly looked distinctly embarrassed and uncomfortable at the same time. She burst out laughing, the pitiful, I'm so sorry, look on his face too much even for her composure. This laughter made Naruto smile again, and he laughed too, the two children giggling happily at Naruto's faux pas. Huh, thought Naruto. Hinata is actually kind of pretty when she's laughing. Their meals arrived, Naruto's already a double helping, and both set to eating the noodle dishes. Hinata listened intently to Naruto's story of what had happened to him the previous night. The daring nighttime raid to steal the scroll, the dramatic battle between Iruka and Mizuki, the last, vital moment where Naruto discovered how to make shadow clones. He sure knew how to make relentless danger sound exciting. No, Hinata scolded herself as she and Naruto began their third and sixth bowls respectively. Naruto could have died last night. I shouldn't be so immature, he's a real person. And yet, she listened closely until his tale came to a close. When it finished, Hinata sat in silent contemplation, her bowl of ramen cooling in the night air. After all those years of wondering why everyone could treat Naruto so badly, sure, he was sometimes overbearing, but he certainly wasn't the only 12-year-old boy guilty of that. Hinata finally had an answer. It was certainly an unconventional situation, she thought. Hinata knew enough about jutsu to realize that theoretically anything could be sealed within any object, but giant demon foxes were admittedly somewhat outside of her area of knowledge. She assumed that people were not actually frightened of Naruto himself. If that were so, they would have been trying to keep him calm and under control. It was rather the potential he held, the innate possibility that the eyes of a child might one day become those of a monster, that made the people of Konoha wary of him. Naruto was by no means the perfect ninja. Despite Hinata's fervent wishing for him to pass on the day before the genin exams, she had still known deep inside that it was very likely that he'd fail. Every time he had gotten a question wrong in class, she had inwardly cringed, wishing she had the courage to walk over and help him where no other student would. She didn't care that he wasn't as smart as other boys, because in truth she found his cluelessness sort of cute, but could he smarten up enough to make it in the field as a real ninja? He was undoubtedly the most determined person she had ever met, an unintentional ideal and mentor to her, and that he had made shadow clones, actual solid shadow clones, was proof enough of his power. The citizens of the village were wrong to fear him, because Naruto didn't want to destroy Konoha, he wanted to rule it. But did he have what it takes to be Hokage? To be more than the average ninja, despite the fact that nearly everyone else had massive advantages in intelligence over him? Could he pay attention when lives depended on it? Most importantly, could he stop thinking about ramen for 5 minutes and look at her? Suddenly Naruto did look at Hinata, and she immediately turned away, blushing so much she swore the air around her hummed. The inquisitive look on his face erased almost all the questions from her mind for the moment, leaving her feeling like she was 6 years old and seeing him for the first time again. Well, she thought, he'll certainly have the upper edge if he ever fights me. Hinata then turned her thoughts onto images of close-quarters combat with Naruto, but her train of thought was swiftly derailed when he spoke again. "Wow," said Naruto, "I talked a whole lot there. You're a really good listener, Hinata." "Thank you," she managed to respond. Just as he was about to call for his 7th bowl, Naruto was called out by Teuchi, who came from out the back to see him. "Hey, Naruto," he said. "Hi, Teuchi," said Naruto. "This is Hinata." "Hinata, Teuchi owns Ichiraku. Your ramen is very nice, Teuchi-san," said Hinata politely. "Thank you, Hinata," said Teuchi. "Naruto, I'd like to give you something today." Naruto stopped eating. "Huh?" he asked. "What?" "Well," said Teuchi, sitting next to the boy, "you're getting older now, Naruto. You're a genin, so you'll start getting paid for your work, but a lot of that will go into items and books for your training, and the stipend you get from the Hokage tends to go towards food. Am I right?" Naruto nodded. Hinata suddenly realized why so many of Naruto's books were secondhand. As a child with no family, he'd have to live on the welfare money the Hokage's office gave him. There were probably not a great deal of impoverished ninjas, so she doubted that the stipend was too low, but considering how badly most people treated Naruto, she wouldn't be surprised if it were hard for him to buy the right equipment. "Ayame and I both want you to have a well-rounded life," he said. "We want you to have hobbies, time alone and with friends, things that aren't only about being a great ninja. But you need money for most things like that." "Teuchi," protested Naruto, "it's nice of you to say that, but I really can't accept you giving me money. I want to make my own way to the top." "We know," said Ayame. "So we're not giving you money. We're giving you stocks." Naruto looked confused. "Why would I need stocks?" he asked. "Stocks," Ayame said, while Hinata covered her mouth and giggled. "You might not know, but Ichiraku's part of a group of restaurants all over the Land of Fire. We're sort of a company. And if you own stocks in our company, said Tucci, you can sell them if they're worth more later, so you'll get money from that. It's our gift to you. Naruto frowned. I'm not sure that this isn't some kinda sneaky way to teach me math, he said cautiously. You don't have to learn math, said Tucci. Just tell us when you want to sell your stocks, and we'll do that for you. Slowly, Naruto nodded. All right, he said, a smile encroaching on his wary face. Thanks, Tucci. And thanks for the ramen, Ayame. Both smiled warmly. He reached for his wallet, but Tucci shook his head. Those can be on the house for tonight, he said. After all, it's not every day a young boy catches a criminal ninja, Naruto nodded happily in confirmation, and he and Hinata stood up, leaving Tucci and Ayame behind. Walking through the night in contented silence, Hinata looked up at the clear sky and mentally thanked whatever star had brought her that night. Then, naturally, Naruto broke the silence. You know, said Naruto, when I was there in the forest, hiding from Mizuki, for a second I really thought I was completely alone. Stupid, huh? You were scared, said Hinata. It's just something that happens. Naruto nodded sagely, then stopped walking completely. Stopping with him, Hinata asked what was wrong. I told you about the nine-tailed fox, didn't I? He said, eyes widened. She said. Naruto cringed. I can't believe it. He had been so caught up in telling his story, rather well, he thought, that he hadn't even thought to keep the fact that he had the nine-tailed fox sealed inside him a secret. Now Hinata, and Tucci and probably Ayame both knew. This was a disaster. He didn't mean to let anyone else know. He said out loud. Seemingly reading his mind, Hinata said. I won't tell anyone. He looked back to her. Really? She nodded very sharply, absolutely certain. His questing blue eyes stayed fixed upon her for a whole minute, his normally kind gaze now one of piercing concern. Then visibly relaxing, he returned to the perpetually happy-go-lucky boy she'd always known. Okay, he said. Together, the young ninja walked home. The Sasuke law. As Shino Aburame knew, there were multiple natural laws of the universe. The law of gravity, for example. Two objects exert a force on each other, equal to the mass of both divided by the square of the distance between them, multiplied by the gravitational constant. The law of attraction between charged particles was similar. Both were independently verified, consistent and empirically proven laws. Of course, they weren't quite perfect descriptors of reality, but they were convenient enough lies that Shino was happy to use them. The Sasuke law, on the other hand, was not. It did not appear in any of Shino's textbooks, of which he had read many. Bringing it up in conversation would only cause blank stares among, say, Ino Yamanaka. Even Shikamaru Nara, the only boy in the class Shino could conclusively say was smarter than him, although he was so lazy that Shino still had the academic advantage, would only respond with a look of bored confusion. It had never been independently verified or empirically proven, but Shino Aburame was convinced it affected everything, all the same. The law was quite simple. Basically, every action that a person could do was ranked on a scale of ease. Persuading Naruto Uzumaki to eat, talk about or doodle little pictures in his notebook of ramen was on the easy end of the scale. Understanding one of Iruka-sensei's lectures was about mid-range. Successfully carrying a conversation with another person without accidentally saying something that made them slowly inch away from you was on the exceptionally difficult end. Thus, using this scale, one could map how hard any series of tasks could be. A difficulty field, if you will. The law was that no matter what the task was, Sasuke Uchiha's difficulty field was always flat. Holding his teeth firmly together and yet still grinding them a little, Shino Aburame stared down at the paper that he had received. It was a single test that would define his future career as a ninja, and he had passed admirably. 98%. 98% was not enough for Shino. Admirably was as good as failure in his eyes. He might as well have simply slept through the test. How could he have received only 98%? Hadn't he spent hour after hour reading through dozens of textbooks every night? Didn't he know the entire chakra pathway system, its locations, its names, its importance in combat and medicine as well as its uses outside those two areas? Hadn't his taijutsu forms been flawless, exactly the same as the ones in taijutsu for genin and beyond? This was unacceptable. He'd barely been able to meet the basic academic standards set down by his parents. What was he going to say to them? That 98% was enough to become a genin, so what did it matter? It was a terrible start to his career as a ninja, and it was worst because he knew for certain that Sasuke Uchiha had passed at 99.9%, the highest possible mark in the exam. There went the Sasuke law again. Actually, considering the law even further, the system of difficulty fields was probably best described as analogous to mass. If Shino was, say, a small moon, then the test had been an asteroid. One easily outweighed the other, and so Shino had brought it into his orbit. Sasuke, on the other hand, was a black hole. This was for 3 reasons. 1. Black holes were so massful that everything else seemed nearly massless in comparison. He was so difficult to beat at anything, everything else paled in significance. 2. He seemed to suck all the light out of the room. 3. Otherwise sensible people revolved around him. The third point was being illustrated right this very minute, as virtually every girl in the class save for Hinata Hyuga was beating Naruto Uzumaki to a pulp for accidentally kissing Sasuke. Shino had not paid much attention to the exact circumstances of the situation, but he did privately wonder why. It wasn't as if giving Naruto bruises all over was going to remove the kiss from existence. He supposed it might have been simply because the girls didn't like Naruto, but why harangue someone you don't like when you can just avoid them completely? Kiba Inuzuka, for example. Sitting up in the further back rows, Kiba was grinning from ear to ear at the prospect of becoming a real ninja. Listening to him babbling on, Shino realized with confusion and then astonishment that Kiba was happy to have simply passed. Evidently his family had somewhat lesser academic standards than Shino's, because he claimed that his mother and sister had both bought him presents due to his success. He was probably lying, of course, but Shino shuddered to think of what kind of upbringing could reward a child for merely passing a test. No, a merely adequate performance was never enough, and he wouldn't let such ideas ruin his grades. Carefully, he moved a little away from Kiba. So, Kiba said to Shikamaru, "What you get?" Shikamaru slowly directed his attention to the dog ninja as Shino made a heroic effort to not correct the boy's grammar. 67, he said in his usual detached tone. 67? Said Kiba, shocked. Damn, wish I'd done so well. My mom might have gotten me 2 presents. Then again, not much use for more old practice kanai anymore, huh boy? He patted his dog Akamaru affectionately, who poked his owner's chin with his nose in response. Shino looked at the two, analyzing them. Very simple, he said. A symbiosis of only 2. Doesn't matter, anyway, said Kiba. I passed. And I bet I'll be first here to make chunin, as well. Confidence bred by ignorance, noted Shino. Chunin? Asked Shikamaru, incredulously. Gimme a break. We're all 12. There's no way any of us are gonna try out for chunin this year. Besides, don't you think the tests to become a chunin might be a little bit harder than the ones to become a genin here? Kiba waved a hand at this. Shikamaru, he said. He would have said it a 3rd time, but that would have taken too long. Being a good ninja's not all about passing tests. You need something other than just smarts. Like what, exactly? Asked Shikamaru. Kiba sat back. I dunno, he said. Luck. Skill. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. I suppose the rest of it's concentrated power of will? Ignoring his bickering classmates, Shino returned to the important task of the moment. Squad selections. Even if he wasn't the highest scoring student in the class, he would definitely have ranked at least 2nd or 3rd. That meant that while he would not be in a squad with the dead last, Naruto, he guessed accurately, he would probably be with someone of a high score, and someone of a fairly low score. This was meant to balance out the squad, although Shino personally saw no great reason for this system. The incompetent shouldn't be made genin at all. Squad 8, announced Iruka. Hinata Hyuga. Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame. Although it was hidden from view by the darkly tinted glass, Shino's left eye twitched. Oh, perfect, thought Shino. With the squads announced, the class broke for lunch. Kiba dashed out almost immediately with Akamaru, while Sasuke Uchiha followed not long behind. Sakura Haruno left to find him almost immediately, an event that triggered Ino's first of many attempts that day to run off to find Sasuke first. She was only stopped by the presence of Iruka, who gently insisted that she at least familiarize herself with her teammates. Hanging around at the back of the class, Hinata hoped against hope that this time, Naruto would notice her. Sitting alone and in the middle row, there was no Sakura to distract him now. If she stood up, maybe she could go and see him before he left. Swallowing nervously, Hinata stood from her chair. Yes, today was the day that she would talk to Naruto again, and make real friends with him. Last night was a very lucky thing to have happened to her, but she couldn't depend on luck if she wanted Naruto to know about her feelings. Standing up from her desk and pushing her chair out, Hinata took the vital first step. Breathing carefully, she took another and another, making her way through to the aisle. I can speak to him. I can speak to him. I can speak to him without blushing and looking down. Breathing in most at the last second, she began to take one more step when Shino Aburame stepped into her view. Arg. Silence followed. Hello, said Shino, remembering the correct word for greeting people this time. Hello, Hinata responded. More silence followed, as Naruto stared wistfully out the window. Hinata looked intently at him, and willed Shino to let her pass with all her heart, because she wasn't brave enough to tell him to get out of the way with her mouth. This conversation is going well, thought Shino. Move 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 move. A smile crossed Naruto's face, and he stood up. No, not you. Stay. In her mind, Hinata shouted herself hoarse as Naruto walked away, but her mouth could only manage a small, Shino felt the deep, unsettling feeling that he usually had whenever a conversation went wrong. Examining his place in the now mostly empty classroom, as well as Hinata's, he looked to the door that Naruto had retreated through, then to the sad-looking girl in front of him, then the door again. She was not an average girl. She was apparently not affected by the Sasuke law, for one thing. For another, she was smart, the second smartest girl in the class, he knew from the test rankings. The second smartest. It suddenly occurred to Shino that maybe Hinata was not unlike him. Always quiet and less spoken to, academically brilliant, but always beaten by one person, whichever girl received the highest marks. He wondered what exactly she wanted to speak to Naruto Uzumaki of all people for, but the sudden flash of realization in Shino's mind was a welcome development. Maybe the conversation could be salvaged. Your written test score was impressive, said Shino. The strange, pale boy's statement intrigued Hinata. The actual words weren't all that surprising, although it was nice to be reminded of her success. It was the tone. He had not said it jealously, but it had not been a compliment either. It was more of a statement of fact, no different to him informing her that her hair was short. Thank you, Shino, said Hinata. Perhaps we should find Kiba? As the two walked out of the academy side by side, it occurred to Hinata that she really should have been more angry with him. He had blocked off her access to Naruto when she was so close to speaking with him again, and hadn't even apologized. But she couldn't really think of a way to tell him off without starting on the wrong foot, and as he thoughtfully stared at the ground, she remembered how little he had spoken to anyone in the whole 6 years they'd been in the same class. Perhaps he simply wasn't very good at talking to other people, as opposed to ants. The two found Kiba playing with Akamaru on the grass, both boy and dog greeting them cheerfully. Sitting in the shade of a tree, Hinata and Kiba ate their lunch in relative silence. Shino politely refused, saying that he wasn't hungry, although he disappeared for about 5 minutes for no apparent reason. The silence among them was broken by the sudden appearance of Naruto. Sneaking past them with a devious smile on his face, the road cone-colored ninja had only passed out of sight for a few moments when Kiba asked the world in general. What do you think he's up to? Hinata was relieved to hear that Kiba's voice seemed to hold no hatred for Naruto. Instead there was amusement, condescension, and maybe even a hint of bitterness, but she wasn't sure. Mulling this over, she suggested, maybe he's planning a practical joke again. Kiba leaned back as Akamaru mooched on the side of his face, and commented, "He smells weird." Shino raised an eyebrow as Hinata tried to keep her indignant rage internalized. Naruto smells perfectly normal. No, he smells perfect? Kiba continued, not quite bad. Sure, he could shower more, but it's not like he smells terrible. He smells like power. Shino raised the other eyebrow at him. Seriously, Akamaru can tell. Naruto smells like he's got more chakra than the rest of the class combined. Akamaru jumped onto Kiba's lap as he said, with a touch of the theatrical. Maybe the rest of the village. So maybe other people do know he has the 9-tailed fox sealed within him, Hinata thought. But then again, it's probably best I don't mention it until somebody else does. Shino, out of eyebrows to raise, was forced to speak. Unlikely, he said. If Naruto were so powerful, surely he would have used all that chakra before. He has certainly been angered enough to do lasting damage on previous occasions, yet he has been a consistent dead last in every class. This was not quite true, strictly speaking. While sharp as a bowling ball would be an unkind yet accurate descriptor of Naruto's mental prowess. Although the scarcity of bowling balls in Konoha would make it an unusual phrase to use. He was actually semi-capable at taijutsu, and thanks to his frequent travels across Konoha he was excellent at chakra jumping, the art of leaping huge distances in a single bound. There was a lot of raw strength and energy in the bright orange boy's stocky frame. The trick was getting him to use it effectively. I guess, said Kiba. But Shikamaru's always getting low scores, and he's the smartest guy the first no, damn. Poor bastard had to be in a team with Ino. Sure glad I didn't end up in her group. Neither Shino nor Hinata responded, both instead staring into space. This continued for a full minute until Kiba stood up, Akamaru climbing up onto his shoulder in the process. He angrily said, perfect. Two brilliant conversationalists for squad mates. We'll talk in a secret code of blushing and eyebrow raising. Neither responded to this, although Hinata looked a little more uncomfortable. Kiba threw up his hands. Oh, come on. We're never gonna be an interesting team if I'm talking to myself all the time. Hinata, we've been discussing Naruto for a full 3 minutes and you haven't got anything to say to defend him? For the briefest of seconds, Kiba thought he'd succeeded in goading Hinata into speaking, but instead, she just looked down again, her pupilless eyes fixed on the ground. The boy realized that this was a step in the wrong direction, and sat down next to her. He then said, quite softly, I'm sorry, Hinata, but, you gotta realize, most of us know. Know what? Thought Shino. Hinata saddened further. So I'm that obvious. Look, we're not, like, making fun of you for it. He looked to Shino for hints. Shino remained cautiously impassive in response. Well, I'm happy about it. Far as I'm concerned, any girl not squeeing over Sasuke's a victory for good taste. Hinata laughed at this, which led Kiba to chuckle in response. He looked to Shino, who did not laugh along. He instead stood straight as ever and remained very still. That guy is really uptight, he thought. Still, got Hinata to laugh, at least. So that is why she wanted to speak to Naruto. His eyes narrowed and thought. Curious. Where did you learn the word, conversationalist? Shino asked. Vocabulary calendar, Kiba answered matter-of-factly, entirely unoffended. My mom always tells me to learn to talk better, but I only got up to March 4th on it when Akamaru chewed it up. If you guys ever happen to end up at my house, put your shoes up on the top shelf if you want him to survive the visit intact. He looked furtively at both of his squad mates, as if it were a half-disguised invitation. Hinata then spoke. Does it seem late? Kiba frowned in confusion. Huh? Hinata, straining against her desire to simply not speak, repeated. If it's not too early, then maybe we should find our sensei? Iruka-sensei didn't direct us to her, and we've been here a long time. That is a good point, said Shino. We should probably search for her before much more of the day is wasted. Kiba leveled his dog-like eyes at Shino in suspicion. Wasted, he thought. Oh yeah, go on. Stare back at me like you got no idea I heard your little crack at Hinata and me. You think you're so cool, Aburame, but I'll show you. You wait and see. I wonder what Kiba is looking at me for, thought Shino. Standing up, Kiba and Hinata went back to the courtyard outside the academy with Shino. Reaching a shady tree, they found 3 of their classmates, Shikamaru, Ino and Choji. Up in the classroom itself, Shino could see Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura waiting for their sensei. Hey guys, greeted Choji. Hey, replied Kiba, and Shino and Hinata nodded slightly to confirm their presence. There were few class members who genuinely didn't like Choji. Ino Yamanaka was one of them. Trying not to bring up her own lunch as the portly boy continued on with his, Ino wondered in her head why anyone would let themselves go as far as an Akamichi could. She'd seen them enter her family's flower shop, and it wasn't just her, squad mate that was a little on the heavy side. Lucky I have naturally skinny genes, she thought, although she was prone to spontaneously dieting. Turning her attentions away to less weighty matters, she focused on the 3 members of Squad 8. Shino was a difficult one to read. Dressed in the same light gray jacket that he always wore and wearing the same dark, reflective glasses, Shino was a fly's wing away from exceptionally creepy. Although Shino was never intentionally mean, the way he talked was so blunt, precise and enunciated Ino sometimes wondered if he was even human at all. He had never shown any particular interest in other people, not even his friends. He instead preferred to watch ants making their hills or collecting food from him. She hoped that she would never have to mind control him, because she figured his mind would be a quite scary place. Kiba, on the other hand, was like a drawing in crayons. Kiba lived for two things: playing with Akamaru and fighting, which had overlapped more and more as the years rolled on. Probably the dumbest boy in the class apart from the obvious road cone-colored dead last, he always wore a distinctly unfashionable fur hoodie that Akamaru would nestle in. Watching him rub his nose on Kiba's hair, Ino had to admit that Akamaru was a cute dog, but there was no way she'd ever try to pet him. She knew she'd never get the smell of either he or his owner off. As for people, Kiba tended to hang out with Shikamaru and Choji more than anyone else. He had once been friends with Naruto, possibly the inept student's only friend, but evidently something had gotten between them, because now Kiba's best friend was Akamaru, and Naruto's best friend was himself. Hinata, on the other hand, was the hardest of all for Ino to get a fix on. If Ino were a member of a rich and influential clan, wait, she already was. But if she were a member of the richest and most influential clan, as Hinata was, she certainly wouldn't be so modest. Always mumbling and averting her eyes, Hinata consistently wore a thick little jacket and kept very quiet, definitely not Ino's style. More importantly, Ino certainly wouldn't be mooning over a scruffy street rat whose idea of subtlety was bright orange and yet couldn't notice Hinata's love for him if it were stapled to his face. Even if it were so arranged that the part that faced his eyes was the part that said, "Hinata likes you." Then again, having one less girl in the ongoing competition for Sasuke Uchiha's heart was a welcome thing. And Hinata was so quiet and so nice, Ino sort of wanted to give her a hug and maybe some chocolate. Shikamaru inclined his head slightly to look at Squad 8 and spoke up. "Thought you'd have left by now," he drawled. "You began Hinata." Shikamaru did not roll his eyes or mock Hinata as he once had. Ever since that day they had fought, so long ago now, he'd reined in his comments around the quiet girl, partly to avoid hurting her feelings and partly to escape a potential beating. Hinata may have been shy and kind, but she was also the highest-ranked girl in taijutsu class, and he was still the worst boy at it. "We are looking for our sensei," explained Shino. "She has not met us at the allocated time." "Same here," shrugged Shikamaru, leaning back as he always did. "So," he said, "Naruto and Sasuke on the same squad. That's gotta suck." "For which one?" asked Kiba. "Either," noted Shikamaru. "Hey," protested Ino. "Don't talk about my Sasuke like that. He's the most talented ninja in any class. He'll be the only reason the team gets anywhere." Hinata privately wondered how Ino could still entertain hopes of making Sasuke her boyfriend when he had rejected every offer of love that had ever come his way, which he'd been receiving for a good 5 years now, and concluded that it wasn't just boys that were exceptionally bull-headed. "He's good," admitted Shikamaru, "but only at school stuff. He'd really suck as a squadmate. Like, he has never hung out with me and Choji, or anyone else to my knowledge, unless he absolutely had to." "Well, maybe if you weren't so mean too." "Mean?" asked Shikamaru. "We've always been the ones asking him. Hell, we even let Naruto tag along sometimes, and you know what he's like." Somehow slouching even further, he added, "Sides, I think he's a bit creepy, how he's always so focused and he barely ever says a word." Sasuke didn't get voted, most likely to snap one day and kill everybody, for nothing. Shino frowned. "When was he voted this?" he asked. Shikamaru sighed. "Joke, Shino," he said. "I just made that up." "Then it's not really a democratic approach," insisted Shino. "His clan died, you know," pouted Ino. "You shouldn't say that about him." "That was years ago," said Shikamaru. "More than enough time to get over something like that." The group suddenly fell silent. Shikamaru realized that he'd done something wrong, but was unsure what exactly. Carefully looking around, he saw that neither Choji nor Ino looked particularly upset, although his friend had stopped putting chips in his mouth, and Shino remained as quietly stoic as ever. It was rather Hinata, and surprisingly Kiba, that looked melancholy. "Why?" he said lamely. Slouched on the ground, his formerly comfortable position had suddenly become very awkward. Fortunately for all, a distraction finally came in the form of their senseis, a man and a woman. Both were fairly tall, but there their resemblances ended. The man dressed in a style not unlike Iruka's, following standard shinobi practices regarding uniform, but was more muscular and had impressive facial hair. The woman's clothes were mostly bandages, and she had dark, slightly curly hair and quite striking maroon eyes. Stepping forward, the man spoke to all of them. "I'm sorry for our lateness," he said. 30 minutes? What, were you on a date?" asked Shikamaru. The previous sad awkward silence was quickly replaced by a happier, more innocent awkward silence thanks to his comment. Neither Shino nor Shikamaru's expressions changed. But Ino smiled knowingly, Hinata fidgeted nervously, and Choji rapidly returned to his chips. Kiba said nothing, but Akamaru nudged at his face in such a way that Kiba quickly knew both of the senseis were emitting very particular pheromones. The frown that marred his face slowly melted away, and he instead grinned into his jacket as the male sensei spoke. We'll take it from here," the shinobi said, even though there was nobody to really take things from. Ino, Shikamaru, Choji. A smile passed over his face as the three followed him away to another part of the courtyard. The raven-haired Kunoichi stepped forward, her maroon eyes flicking from Shino to Kiba, then finally resting on Hinata, who politely returned the gesture by quietly looking lower than her gaze. "Good afternoon. I'm Kurenai Yuhi, and I'll be your squad leader. I know all your names, but I'd like you to tell me them again so we can be sure." She smiled, and Hinata immediately felt heartened. She had never met the Jonin before, but she was sure that the Kunoichi would be kind. Kiba briefly waited, then said, "I'm Kiba of the Inuzuka clan. This is my dog, Akamaru." Akamaru yipped in greeting. Kurenai nodded to the dog. Shino then spoke. "I am Shino Aburame. Kurenai sensei, have you heard of my clan's particular skill?" Kurenai began to respond, but Shino continued speaking, something that both Hinata and Kiba winced slightly at. "If you have, then you will also know that it might have psychological effects on Kiba and Hinata if I use it. Knowing this, would you consider it best for me to avoid using this skill at all costs?" Kurenai considered this. "I am placing this at your discretion, Shino, although you should probably know that Hinata could discover this skill for herself." Shino looked subtly uncomfortable. "Me? Why could only I and not Kiba work out what Shino's skill is?" Thought Hinata. "I don't know much about the Aburame clan, something related to bugs? But they're very mysterious. It's kind of exciting having teammates I don't know much about. But I shouldn't try to find out Shino's secret skill, even if it is very interesting." Kurenai turned to Hinata. "I'm sorry, Hinata, I've deprived you of your introducing yourself." Thank you, Kurenai-sensei." Kurenai frowned. I didn't think Hiyashi was being fair on her when he said she was useless, she thought, considering the clan leader's words, but she is pretty shy. "I'd still like it if you did introduce yourself, Hinata." "Sorry, Kurenai-sensei. My name is Hinata Hyuga." "And?" Hinata looked confused. "And I don't have any other names?" Kurenai laughed. "No, Hinata, your special skill. The skill of your family." "Oh," Hinata realized. "The Byakugan." Kurenai nodded. Kiba, suddenly also looking as uncomfortable as Shino, spoke again. Kurenai-sensei, maybe we should all agree to not, use our skills on each other?" Hinata blinked in confusion. What could he mean? I don't see how the Byakugan could frighten Kiba. It's not even an offensive technique by itself. It's only for seeing things from afar and through things. Kiba rubbed the back of his neck in awkwardness, and Hinata blushed down at the ground. Shino, on the other hand, looked more concerned than embarrassed. "Put it this way, Kiba," remarked Kurenai. "We'll try to keep from using our particular special skills unless it's a matter of life or death. Is everyone fine with that?" All three genin nodded. "Excellent," said Kurenai. "We'll head to the training ground."
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.